Chapter 1750. The American residents who were hundreds of miles away from the temple felt the earth quaking and the mountains shaking. Many of their houses collapsed. If the local government hadn't warned them in advance and moved them to the refugee camps, there would have been a large number of casualties. People saw many giant mushroom clouds rising. The ground was shaking, the lake was boiling, and the mountains were collapsing. With the Golden Temple as the center, the ground within 100 square miles had sunk dozens of meters. It was as smooth as a mirror, as if a basin had appeared on the ground out of nowhere. I can't believe the power of that attack is so terrifying. The laws of the world are 10 times harder than before. Even if 1,000 nuclear weapons were released at the same time, they might not be able to cause such terrifying damage. In the Pentagon, Keynes and many generals were shocked as if they had seen a god. According to their calculations, Zhang Tian's attack would have been enough to completely destroy the entire South American continent before the recovery of spirit qi. The Golden Temple wasn't made of real gold but a kind of space metal. It was said that even the fire of the stars couldn't burn it, but Zhang Tian had destroyed it at the moment. Damn it! Gorlin's projection roared and suddenly disappeared. Then there was an earth-shattering explosion. The Golden Temple was torn apart. Blood splashed and broken limbs flew in the air. Many people rushed out of the Golden Temple. Zhang Tian's will to fight soared. He was as strong as a dragon as he chased after them. He slashed with his blade and was invincible like a blood-soaked fiend. In the blink of an eye, another dozen or so nascent Soul Stage Superbrain Divine Tribe members were killed. With Gorlin as the leader, the 3 Soul Formation Stage Superbrain Divine Tribe members hurriedly took the Superbrain Divine Tribe members into the mountain-like golden warships. In the blink of an eye, the warships rose into the sky and flew toward the outer space. Apparently, they had sensed the threat of Zhang Tian and wanted to escape to the outer space city to join Han Ming's troops. Dozens of battleships were running away. Huge cannons extended out of the battleships, aiming at where Zhang Tian was in the Golden God Temple, ready to fire. Those cannons were able to shoot Dharmalas and even Dharmalas. They were as powerful as Kuelian weapons and far more powerful than nuclear weapons. Zhang Tian was not afraid at all. He trod on the void and cast the Kuan Ping at his fastest speed. His body was enshrouded in divine light, and the divine disk behind him spun slowly. It was like an eternal furnace that provided Zhang Tian with endless energy, allowing him to speed up rapidly. Like a flickering light, he chased after the warships. Fire. Following Gorlin's order, the spaceships immediately opened fire. Light pillars of law pierced through the void and shot towards Zhang Tian. However, Zhang Tian had already formed the chaotic divine body and was almost indestructible. He could be said to be the strongest and strongest in the universe. How could those ordinary light pillars hurt him? Rumble. Between heaven and earth, there was a terrifying sound of laws shattering. It was as if heaven and earth were collapsing and the sun and moon were hanging upside down. There were many giant pits behind Zhang Tian. Each of them was as deep as a lake, which looked terrifying and terrifying. But Zhang Tian didn't slow down at all. He caught up with the ships in a blink and slashed with his blade. In a heartbeat, the indestructible warships that could resist nuclear weapons and even sunflower lotuses were cut into pieces. They fell to the ground with soaring flames and some even exploded on the spot, turning into liquid metal. The superbrain cultivators inside were immediately reduced to ashes. Before the other battleships left the atmosphere, Zhang Tian had already arrived above the largest battleship where Gorlin was. He slashed the battleship in half and then grabbed Gorlin and the other 2 soul formation cultivators who were severely injured. Gorlin was obviously bluffing. The so-called superbrain divine race was actually better at researching and making Dharma artifacts. They made use of external materials and they were technologically advanced. However, they were actually weaker than Divine Lord Scorpio and Divine Lord Astral Fire in terms of power. Now what else do you have to say? Give me the divine souls of Yi Tianren and the others. Zhang Tian placed his hands behind his back and looked down at Gorlin and the other 2 divine lords who were trapped by the sea-calming ice god Dharma laws. At that moment, Gorlin and the other 2 godly lords were severely injured by Zhang Tian's solitary destruction void-splitting blade. Their golden robes were torn apart, their skin was torn, their divine treasures were damaged and their gods were half dead. Even their soul energy was destroyed by Zhang Tian. I'll give it to you. Please spare our lives, Divine Lord of the Taichu. Gorlin was terrified and he immediately took out an array disc to nourish his soul. Yi Tianren's divine soul was being nourished and it was flickering. Divine Lord, we were forced to do this. Han Ming Zhongzi is too powerful. We didn't dare to disobey him. Divine Lord, please spare our lives. We're willing to follow you. Gorlin and the others cried out in fear, tears and mucus flowing down their faces. Of course, they knew that Jiang Tian was at the nascent soul level and should be called a heavenly lord. However, Jiang Tian was powerful enough to crush normal soul formation cultivators like slaughtering chickens and dogs. He certainly deserved the title of a divine lord, the most powerful one among the divine lords. Jiang Tian raised his hand to retrieve the disc. Seeing that Yi Tianren's soul was still intact, he was relieved. He frowned and shouted, "What about Ying Su and the others? We've already devoured it." Gorlin's face was ashen as he spoke with a trembling voice. Wei Fialong Zhao Yuankuan Hu Qingtian. Yi Zhantian Ying Su, the 9 elders of Hongmeng. Jiang Tian closed his eyes slightly and a trace of pain flashed across his face. In his mind, the voices and smiling faces of his many disciples and comrades appeared. Of these people, which one of them wasn't a talented person? Which one of them wasn't an upright man? In order to protect Earth, they were not afraid of death. They fought against the extraterrestrial demons without any regrets. Jiang Tian, of course, was not willing to sit and watch them fall. However, even though Jiang Tian had formed the 9 orifices divine infant and was known as the child of an entity, there were still some things he couldn't do at the moment. Everyone's souls were devoured, and their memories were melted and annihilated, turning into pure spiritual energy that became the resources for others to advance in their cultivation. This was not something that Jiang Tian could restore. What a pity! Jiang Tian's regret and pain eventually turned into anger. His eyes flashed coldly as he stared at Gorlin and the other 2. He slowly raised his right hand and said coldly, "Gorlin, the 3 of you have committed unforgivable crimes. You should pay with your lives for the cultivators on Earth. Your clansmen should also be buried with them. Divine Lord, please spare our lives. Divine Lord, I'm Han Ming's right-hand man. If you don't kill us, we can definitely mediate and put out the fire of war that's about to burn. Senior Tai Chu has already killed too many of Han Ming's subordinates. If you kill us, I'm afraid Han Ming will be furious and send many spaceships to Earth. By then no one will be able to stop them. Ying Su and the others are already dead. Even if you kill us, they won't be able to come back to life. The Divine Lord of the Tai Chu is wise and resourceful, so you must know that people should look ahead. You should make a wise decision between 3 more powerful loyal allies and a group of strong enemies." Gorlin and the other 2 were so scared that their faces changed drastically. They were like stray dogs, constantly kowtowing, half begging for mercy and half threatening as they shouted. "I can't stop Han Ming? Who does he think he is? You're using him to threaten me. You've underestimated Kong Teichu. Indeed, they can't be brought back to life. However, it's only right to kill you and avenge them." Jiang Tian chuckled. Suddenly, he slapped with his right hand mercilessly. With a loud bang, this palm directly smashed the 3 divine transformation realm cultivators into meat paste. Even the gods were crushed into pieces. Jiang Tian absorbed all of their mental energy, then used the special ability of the Super Brain Clan to connect their souls and used the karma-severing curse, using the hell-suppressing demon god soul to trace back to their roots, killing all of the super brain humans that escaped. Chapter 1751. Senior Tai Chu, we're sorry for not taking good care of the divine souls of the heroes. Please punish us, Divine Lord. At this time, the messengers of hell from Mount Mang, who were captured by Gorlin and the others, also broke free from the restriction and walked out. They knelt in front of Jiang Tian and called him Divine Lord. Their bodies trembled as they felt guilty. "Lu Shang, take them back to Mount Mang. Remember, repair all the arrays and train these messengers of hell. If there's another battle, you have to do your part. The divine souls of the heroes shouldn't be destroyed." Jiang Tian didn't punish them. After all, they had done their best. Yes. Divine Lord Taichu. In the end, only Yi Tianren's divine soul was left. Lu Shang's heart was heavy and ashamed. After kowtowing, he left with the messengers of hell. Jiang Tian calmed his emotions, and only then did he bring Yi Karen and the large black dog and fly off into the distance. "My lord, where are we going?" The big black dog turned into a purple gold divine dragon, and Jiang Tian sat cross-legged on his back. After all, it was a divine beast of the starry sky. Its speed was not much slower than Jiang Tian's. Jiang Tian looked at the sky. In the eyes of others it was a dead deep space, but in Jiang Tian's eyes, it was a mountain-like battleship. There were so many of them that they were like a plague of locusts. They were close to Earth and blocked the entire planet. Han Ming's army has begun to move towards Earth. Jiang Tian's face was gloomy and his eyes were flickering. He said, "I'm going back to Tianqing school to cultivate in seclusion. It's time to break through to the 4th or 5th level of the nascent soul realm." "What? Break through to the 5th level of the nascent soul realm?" The big black dog was shocked. "It's not impossible for me to break through to the later stage of the nascent soul realm," Jiang Tian said leisurely. The last time he cultivated in seclusion was in the fallen immortal sea above the ruins of immortality. That time he broke through to the 3rd level of the nascent soul realm and came out of seclusion. He defeated the entire empire of the ruins of immortality and killed hundreds of soul formation realm cultivators. He completely dominated the entire ruins of immortality. But after that he did not go into seclusion. He had created a clone for Zhou Xian and returned to Earth. But in the battle in the ruins of immortality he had gained too much. Including the blood essence of the past divine emperors and Song Ming, it was enough to push him to the late stage of the nascent soul realm, not to mention the many ordinary soul formation realm cultivators. On the way back, although Jiang Tian did not go into seclusion, he still cultivated diligently every day. Now he was only one step away from the 4th level of the nascent soul stage. At this time the war was coming. Jiang Tian should have a small secluded meditation and rush to the late stage of the nascent soul realm. At that time whatever bullshit Han Ming Zongzi he would crush him into dregs. When Jiang Tian rushed to Sidoni's Tianqing school, the whole world was in an uproar. The Taichu Divine Emperor of the Golden Divine Temple killed 3 soul formation cultivators and many members of the Super Brain Divine race. None of them escaped. When the news spread, the whole world was shocked. The entire earth was in an uproar. Billions of people were thrilled. Jiang Tian had killed the 5 most powerful heavenly lords of Wuxia, Jeffrey and many other important members of the Myth Alliance. Although they were powerful, they were only puppets supported by the Beihan sect on Earth after all. In the eyes of the world, there was a huge difference between them and the real enemies from other planets. Although Hanch Divine Prince and other cultivators from other planets said that Jiang Tian had killed Astral Fire, Tai Sha and other divine emperors from other planets on Mars, there was no proof after all. Many cautious people still had reservations. But this time it was different. Under the witness of more than 1 billion people, Jiang Tian had destroyed the Golden Temple and killed 3 semi-god realm warriors. Moreover, he had killed them in a crushing manner. Therefore the shock it brought was imaginable. This means that the cultivators from other planets aren't invincible. What deities from other planets? Bullshit. They're just ordinary people. With the Divine Lord of the Taichu sect, Earth will stand tall and we won't be afraid of other planets. One day Earth may even be able to stand proudly in the forest of cultivation civilizations in the Milky Way and not be weaker. This time not only will we defeat Han Ming and the others of the Beihan sect, but we'll also go across the Star Ocean and attack the Dipper sect. Some of Jiang Tian's supporters were thrilled. They went to the streets and shouted with passion. Although it seemed like Jiang Tian had easily killed Gorlin and the other 2 divine monarchs, they couldn't be underestimated. Even in the northern Dipper divine monarchs, they were existences that ruled over a star. Today they were actually killed by Jiang Tian with a wave of his hand. This imperceptibly boosted everyone's confidence and morale. Because of the 2 years of chaos, the humans on Earth had witnessed the power of the cultivators from other planets and truly felt how weak they were. Almost half of the cultivators on Earth had died, so the idea of failure became popular. And Jiang Tian's battle at the Golden Divine Temple in South America was like a shot of adrenaline that gave Earth a glimmer of hope. While the world was in an uproar, Jiang Tian came to Tianqing school. Sect Master is back. The whole family, King Arthur, Situ Shao, Lotus Tathagata, Sasaki Kaisha, and other disciples and relatives all came out to welcome them. Jiang Tian didn't see Huang linger, but he didn't care. His disciples were guarding different places around the world and Xin Mange was guarding Wuxia. Son, you're finally back. Why were you gone for so long? Do you know how I have been in the past few years? Zhang Wanqing, who had some wrinkles at the corner of her eyes, hugged Jiang Tian tightly. She was crying, laughing, blaming, and rejoicing at the same time. After several years of cultivation, Zhang Wanqing had also reached foundation establishment. Originally, her appearance wouldn't have changed, but in the 4 or 5 years after Jiang Tian left, she missed her son and was filled with worry. Every day she couldn't sleep, and there were actually traces left behind by the passage of time. It's good that you are back. Let's not talk about the past. Jiang Zhixing persuaded. Sigh, what a pity for all parents. Jiang Zhixing was wiping his tears silently. He wanted to come and see Jiang Tian, but he restrained himself and maintained the posture of a strict father. Jiang Tian also had mixed feelings. This grandson of mine really doesn't let me down. Not only did he come back victorious from the expedition to the ruins of immortality, but he also regained the power of the Mythology Alliance. He is now the pillar of earth and the only hope. Jiang Chongging was very comforted. He looked around and said proudly, "He's Dad." A little girl of 5 or 6 years old with 2 braids, wearing a small t-shirt and shorts, showed her tender arms. From afar she looked like a porcelain doll. Her long eyelashes fluttered as she looked at Jiang Tian timidly. "This is Jiang Beibei. He is so big now." Jiang Tian saw his daughter for the first time. She was so beautiful, so cute and healthy. For a moment his heart was filled with mixed feelings. His eyes were hot and he almost cried. Chapter 1752. Yes, this is your daddy. Haven't you always wanted to see your daddy? Call him daddy. Zhou Xueqing squatted down and said softly, "I won't. I don't have a daddy." Jiang Beibei became even more bashful. Her little face turned red and she threw herself into Zhou Xueqing's arms. She left Jiang Tian with her back facing him, but she kept blinking her big watery eyes and peeking at Jiang Tian. "Silly girl, if you don't have a daddy, where are you from?" Zhou Xueqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She scratched her little nose and said angrily. The little girl said in a childish voice, "Mommy gave birth to me." A child's words carry no harm. God is so cute. The people around them all smiled kindly. However, Zhang Wanqing and the other family members felt sad. Jiang Tian had been away for 5 years. The little girl had been taken care of by everyone. Although she didn't suffer much, she lacked fatherly love, which was normal for other children. To some extent, she didn't live as happily as the children of ordinary families. She often looked up at the sky alone in the yard with a space telescope to search for the Alpha Centauri star system. She hoped that one day she could see her daddy's figure descending from the sky. However, every time she hoped, she was disappointed. It was normal for her to feel a little resentful and alienated. "Baby, he's really your daddy. Call him daddy." Zhang Wanqing walked over and said seriously with a straight face. "No." Jiang Beibei said stubbornly. Jiang Tian quickly stopped her and said, "Mom, forget it. I just came back. It's normal for Beibei to be a little shy. Give her some time to adapt." At this time, the purple and gold dragon turned into a big black dog and ran over like a calf. It said in human language, "Beibei, do you want to ride a big horse?" "Uncle Dahei, you're back too." Jiang Beibei's eyes lit up. She rushed over and hugged the big black dog's neck. She rubbed her little head and said softly, "Beibei missed you so much. Lie down, I want to ride a big horse." Jiang Tian was speechless. "In front of my daughter, I'm even worse off than the large black dog." Furthermore, the large black dog was really bold. "You actually called yourself Jiang Beibei's uncle. Could it be that you wanted to address me as your brother?" The large black dog smiled slyly and said, "If you want to ride a big horse, sure. But you have to call him Daddy. Daddy loves you very much. He brought you a lot of spirit fruits and a puppet beast." Jiang Tian was also too excited. For a moment he forgot about the gift he brought for his daughter. He quickly took out a fruit of embryonic origin and said with a smile, "Girl, for you." The fruit of embryonic origin looked a little like a cherry, but it was a little bigger. It was the size of a child's fist and was sparkling and translucent like a red gem. It looked sweet and juicy, causing people to salivate. Inside it, there were streams of spiritual energy circulating like clouds. The level of this spirit fruit is not low. However, Zhou Xueqing revealed a worried expression. The spiritual energy of this spirit fruit was very abundant. Only Foundation establishment cultivators could refine it. If ordinary people ate it, their meridians would probably explode and they would die. It was like how 100-year-old ginseng was very nutritious, but if one ate too much they would also feel hot and have a nosebleed. Mom, can't I eat it? Jiang Beibei's gluttonous nature was completely exposed. A drop of sparkling saliva flowed out of the corner of her mouth. Her little hand had already reached over, but when she saw this scene she retracted her hand. It's fine. She has a special constitution. Jiang Tian smiled faintly, and then stuffed it into Jiang Beibei's little hand. Jiang Beibei turned her back to him. Like a little hamster she ground her fine silver teeth and ate at an extremely fast speed. Is it good? Jiang Tian asked gently. Yes, yes, yes. The little girl kept nodding, but her eating speed was not slow at all. Soon she finished a fruit of embryonic origin and turned to Jiang Tian. Is there more? Jiang Tian directly took out a bag. That's great. Jiang Beibei finally smiled. After receiving it she held it tightly in her arms and picked up another fruit to eat quickly. After that Jiang Tian took out a shiny golden puppet puppy. This puppy had a demonic beast soul planted in it. Jiang Tian had refined it and made it obey his orders. Squat down. Get up. Roll over. Bow. Jiang Beibei commanded as if it was her own arm. With a command the puppy immediately moved accordingly. Jiang Beibei loved it so much that she could not put it down. What do you think of the present from Dad? Zhou Xian was inspired. It's delicious and fun. Jiang Beibei smiled sweetly and stole a glance at Jiang Tian. Her big watery eyes finally showed traces of affection. However, when Jiang Tian smiled at her, the little girl immediately retracted her gaze and looked at the big black dog. Uncle Big Black, ride the big horse. If you don't call him Dad, you can't ride the big horse. The large black dog placed his paws on his hips and acted as if he was a god. Your father has even more delicious and fun things to eat. If you don't call me Daddy, then I'll be your father. If you don't call him Dad, he might give them to other children. The little girl was in a dilemma, but was tempted by delicious food, toys, and riding a big horse. In the end she could only move to Jiang Tian's side and call softly, Dad. Amidst everyone's kind laughter, Jiang Tian responded happily. He picked up his daughter and said with a smile, Come ride the big horse. Master, I'm coming. The big black dog shook his body and transformed into a 300-meter-long purple-gold true dragon. Uncle Big Black has become a dragon. Jiang Beibei's eyes almost popped out. She was so shocked that the fruit of embryonic origin fell to the ground. She was not afraid, but the sudden expansion was indeed a little shocking. Don't be afraid. Jiang Tian carried his daughter and jumped up. The purple-gold true dragon instantly soared into the sky and dived into the sea of clouds. It sometimes roamed quickly, sometimes dived down to the ground, and sometimes shuttled through the mountains. It was like a roller coaster, extremely exciting. Dad, Uncle Big Black is so awesome. Jiang Beibei screamed with joy from time to time. When she was scared, she hugged Jiang Tian tightly and buried her head in Jiang Tian's neck and closed her eyes. Children were easy to coax. After only half an hour of meeting, Jiang Beibei and Jiang Tian had become completely familiar with each other. The estrangement between them was gone, and she called him Dad affectionately. She even asked Jiang Tian to tell her a bedtime story at night. Jiang Tian accompanied his parents to have a home-cooked meal. The family had not seen him for 5 years, so it was naturally lively and joyful. At night, Jiang Tian told Jiang Beibei a bedtime story and coaxed her to sleep. Only then did he stroll under the moonlight and chat with Zhou Xian. It's so happy to be together as a family. Zhou Xian sighed faintly. Under the moonlight, Jiang Tian and Zhou Xian strolled on the cobblestone path hand in hand. Streams of clear spirit spring water gurgled on the clean stones, making pleasant tinkling sounds. The wind blew gently and the orchids swayed along the path, emitting a tempting fragrance. In the pool, the purple-gold true dragon leaned against a huge rock and slept on its back, making light snoring sounds. Many white cranes and spirit birds were sleeping next to each other. This place was peaceful, making people feel that time was peaceful. Zhou Xian clearly remembered that on the day Jiang Tian went straight into the sea of stars and left Earth, the scenery was also quiet and peaceful. At that time she was very worried about Jiang Tian's risky actions. Only 5 years had passed, but the world had already undergone great changes. The sea had turned into mulberry fields, the earth was in chaos, and there were foreign invasions. But fortunately, Jiang Tian destroyed the empire of the ruins of immortality and became the lord of the ruins of immortality. He returned safely, which made her feel warm and satisfied. Chapter 1753. Yes. Jiang Tian put his arm around Zhou Xueqing's shoulder and looked at the surrounding scenery with longing. He revealed a smile. The warmth and touch of his daughter's small and delicate body seemed to still be there. The moment he hugged his daughter, he felt that the 5 years of bloody battles, cruel expeditions, and all kinds of risks were all worth it. The best defense was offense. If he didn't go to the ruins of deities, they would have already come and the people on Earth would be in a terrible situation. No egg would remain intact when the nest was overturned. The Tianqing school might have been destroyed and even his family might not be able to survive. But the deity trap array was torn apart and the spirit chi was restored. It did attract the Big Dipper army. Zhou Xueqing suddenly sighed, her brows rippling with a melancholy that was difficult to dispel. She was a deity-grade soul formation cultivator, but only at the early stage of the soul formation realm. It wouldn't be a big problem for her to kill any cultivator at the peak of the soul formation realm. But Divine Prince Han Ming was different. He was a late-stage sacred soul formation cultivator, comparable to a half-saint. Objectively speaking, Zhou Xueqing was slightly inferior. And Jiang Tian also knew that the Zhou Xueqing in front of him was just a clone. Although she used the creation substance and the 5 elements, heavenly materials and earthly treasures to build her internal organs and left many divine powers, she wasn't the original Zhou Xueqing after all, so her strength was reduced by half. If the original Zhou Xueqing had a 50% chance of winning, this clone only had a slim chance of winning. It's okay. Jiang Tian said softly. I plan to cultivate in seclusion for 5 days. With the help of the time array disc, I should be able to break through to the mid-stage or even the peak stage of the nascent soul realm. I'm a divine-grade nascent soul cultivator. By then I won't be afraid of a sacred soul formation cultivator, even if he's at the peak stage. You're going to cultivate in seclusion again. A trace of resentment flashed in Zhou Xueqing's eyes. Jiang Tian hadn't been intimate with her for a moment since he returned from the ruins of deities. It was impossible to say that she didn't have the slightest expectation. However, she had inherited the memories and way of thinking of the main body, so her personality and reactions were extremely similar to the main body. She smiled and said, Okay husband, I'll guard the sect for you. You can go into seclusion in peace. Not just the sect but the entire world. Jiang Tian corrected him. I understand. Zhou Xueqing smiled apologetically. She felt that she was always slightly inferior to Jiang Tian in terms of scheming. Of course, in Han Ming's eyes, Tianqing school may be the most important force on Earth that needs to be eliminated. Therefore, Tianqing school is likely to bear the brunt of the attack. If you protect Tianqing school well, you will be protecting the entire world. Jiang Tian smiled. That night, Jiang Tian went into seclusion and announced that Zhou Xueqing would be in charge of the affairs of the Myth Alliance and Tianqing school. Without Zhou Xueqing's order, no one was allowed to disturb them even if the sky fell. Those who disobey will be killed without mercy. Whoosh. In an empty room deep inside the sect, Jiang Tian sat on a cushion with a calm face. Suddenly he tapped the sky-swallowing demonic gourd on his waist. Immediately, surging essence chi and soul energy gushed out and floated around. All kinds of Dharma laws and fragments of the Grand Tao floated up and down. They were so dense that they couldn't be dissolved. After refining the blood of 100 soul formation cultivators, I think I can enter the 4th level of the nascent soul level, or even the peak stage of the nascent soul level. Jiang Tian's expression was calm and resolute. His gaze was focused as he took out the time formation plate once more, filling it with high-grade energy crystals. The time formation plate activated, forming a time formation boundary that completely enveloped him. Refine. Jiang Tian shouted in a low voice. The 9 orifices nascent soul in the spirit embryo suddenly opened its eyes, as if it could see through the world. Refine. The 9 orifices divine infant formed a mysterious spell with its hands and the divine plate behind it turned into chaotic flames, forming an ancient-looking cauldron. The fire inside was strong enough to burn a soul formation level cultivator. Only a day had passed outside, but dozens of days had passed since Jiang Tian's time array disc accelerated. After refining the blood of the divine emperors of the ruins of deity, Jiang Tian broke through the 4th level of the nascent soul level and entered the mid-stage of the nascent soul level. The spirit embryo was extremely dense and heavy as if it were made of gold. It was giving off an eternal and indestructible energy. The 9 orifices divine infant, which was originally the size of a thumb, had also expanded several times and reached 3 inches. Moreover, it was becoming more and more dazzling, exuding a mystical aura. Its vertical pupils were demonic, and its eyes were filled with disdain. The aura of primal chaos lingered around its body, carrying with it the aura of creation and the beginning of all things, as if it could create a world. Not only has the divine infant reached the phenomenal success level, but my chaotic divine body has also been nourished. It's about to reach the phenomenal success level. Jiang Tian looked at the chaotic divine body and could not help but reveal a hint of surprise. At this moment, the chaotic divine body shone brightly. It was as if there were galaxies flowing under his skin. Star regions were flickering. A faint pressure enveloped the entire dojo, covering an area of 100 miles. What a terrifying energy. It's like a deity. Outside, Lotus Tathagata, Situ Shao Yi Karen, and the others all felt a sense of trepidation. They could not bear it and cried out in alarm. One had to know that after Zhou Xueqing returned, she had already used Peerless treasured medicine to recover their Dantian's spirit embryo and so on. Although their cultivation hadn't returned to their peak state, they had recovered 70 to 80%. They were the strongest nascent soul and golden core cultivators. However, they still felt like rabbits meeting a tiger when facing Jiang Tian's energy, which was suppressed by their cultivation. It was an instinctive fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. The energy is suddenly here. Has Senior Tai Chu broken through? Is he going to come out? Yi Karen clicked his tongue and exclaimed. He must have broken through to the 4th level of the nascent soul level and entered the mid-stage. Joy appeared on Zhou Xueqing's pretty face. It was as if 100 flowers had bloomed, causing the surroundings to brighten up. However, she remained calm and said softly, however, if he doesn't come out of seclusion, no one can disturb him. What? Master's going to break through continuously? Lotus was shocked. If he can kill a soul formation cultivator at the early stage of the nascent soul level, it'll be a piece of cake for him. If he breaks through to the peak stage of the nascent soul level, even Han Ming Zongzi won't be able to defeat him. Sasaki Aisha was wearing a kimono and carrying a sword on her back. She looked like a peerless swordswoman. Hearing this, she couldn't help but feel her blood boiling. Her eyes lit up and a surge of fighting spirit soared into the sky. That's right. Everyone's blood was boiling and the depression and pressure in their hearts were gone. Master's wife, something's wrong. At this moment, a dignified figure walked in quickly. It was Qin Yang. What's going on? Zhou Xueqing raised her eyebrows and took a sip of tea. Qin Yang was the representative of Sidoni and the Tianqing school in the Mythological Alliance. He was discussing with the cultivation organizations and the military about how to deal with the enemy, so the news he brought must be very important. Besides, he seemed to be in a hurry, so it must be something serious. According to NASA's surveillance, tens of thousands of spaceships from the Beihan sect are heading straight for Earth. They are only 800,000 kilometers away from Earth now. After hearing what Qin Yang said, everyone was shocked. Chapter 1754. Unexpectedly, Han Ming Zongzi was also a ruthless and decisive person. Once he gave the order, he immediately launched a decisive battle without holding back. Not only did Qin Yang bring back news, but he also brought back images taken by many radio telescopes. They're going all out to fight to the death. And the Lord is still in seclusion. Old Rulai Lotus was shocked. 5 years later, he had already stepped into the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Back then, he was the old Rulai of West Earth, a figure who dominated a world. What kind of cruel battles had he not experienced? What kind of big scenes had he not experienced? However, when he saw these scenes, he also felt a sense of trepidation. After all, this was a cultivation civilization that far surpassed Earth and West Earth. Masters, what should we do? After all, Yi Karen and Sasaki Haisha were still young, so they were a little flustered. This battle was different from the previous one. They were only fighting with the agents trained by Han Ming Zongzi, such as Jeffrey and Zhou Xian. Even so, they were still at a disadvantage. If it weren't for the strong foundation laid by Jiang Tian, the Tianqing school would have collapsed. And this time Han Ming Zongzi had mobilized an army to fight head-on, which was an unprecedented enemy. It was impossible and abnormal to say that they weren't nervous. Mom, the dog puppet can't move. No, it's lame. Suddenly, Jiang Beibei ran in with the dog puppet in her arms and said with red eyes, "Brat, I told you not to open its stomach, but you insisted." Zhao Xueqing used the art of creation to repair the broken dog puppet and scolded gently, "You broke the talisman array and the talisman lines. Although its divine soul sends a signal and the reactor provides energy, it can't be transmitted to its limbs. Isn't that lame? I want to open it and see if its body structure is the same as Uncle Dahei's." Jiang Beibei leaned against Zhao Xueqing and said coquettishly, "Beibei, what do you mean? Do you want to open Uncle Dahei? Don't scare me." The big black dog trembled in fear. A moment later, Zhao Xueqing crossed her right leg over her left. She wore an embroidered slipper on her snowy right foot. Her pinkish-white toes subconsciously curled up as she quickly fixed the puppet puppy. She grumbled, "You're just like your father, a violent maniac. You're not allowed to be so rough in the future, got it? Got it. Put down. Roll on the ground." Jiang Beibei smiled sweetly and squatted beside Zhao Xueqing, playing with the puppet dog happily. Qin Yang was anxious. He bowed and asked, "Mistress, how should we deal with this? Please give the order. Should we wake the leader of the Taichu Alliance? He's going into seclusion, so don't disturb him. I alone am enough." Zhao Xueqing took another sip of tea before gently placing the teacup on the table as if she hadn't had enough. She stood up and said with a smile, "What?" Everyone was shocked. "Mom, where are you going?" Jiang Beibei was also holding the puppet dog. Her eyes were slightly red as she shouted worriedly. She was very precocious and knew everything. She knew that every time her mother went out, it was to kill bad people and risk her life. "Grandpa, everyone guard the sect for me." Zhao Xueqing knew that Jiang Tian's seclusion couldn't be disturbed. Once the Big Dipper entered Earth, Jiang Tian's undisturbed seclusion would be empty words. Therefore they had to be stopped outside the realm and not be allowed to approach the Tianqing sect. He picked up Jiang Beibei and kissed her. She teased her and said, "Why are you crying? I'm just going to kill a few evil dogs. I'll come back and tell you a bedtime story at night." "Mom, you must keep your word," Jiang Beibei said with tears in her eyes. "Qing'er, you must be careful." "I'll take good care of Beibei." Zhang Wanqing took her granddaughter and said worriedly. Zhao Xueqing nodded with a smile and stepped into the sky. The aura on her body became brighter and brighter, like a burning flame. Her energy broke through the clouds. It was small at first, but in the end it was like a surging wave. "Mistress, she's as strong as a man. He's so powerful." "Yes, only such a supreme beauty is worthy of the sect master." Everyone on the ground was terrified. They only felt a terrifying energy descending from the sky, as if an ancient divine beast had awakened. Lotus Lord, Situ Shao and the others looked solemn and respectful. Yi Karen, Sasaki Haisha and the other female cultivators were also fascinated and wanted to be in her place. Even the cultivators from other planets such as Hanch Divine Prince and Qin Shi Fairy were in awe. Boom. Thousands of feet in the sky, the clouds and laws were split in half by Zhao Xueqing. She rushed out of Earth's gravitational field in the blink of an eye. There were no clouds in the way and the sun seemed to be 100 times brighter than before. It shone on her white dress and reflected a dazzling light. "They're really here." Zhao Xueqing's expression was slightly awe-inspiring. She looked at the deep space and saw extremely small black dots. Suddenly, she slapped her storage ring and summoned the unsetting sun. The hatch opened and she took the ship and rushed toward the outer space. "The Beihan sect is invading." Soon the news spread across the entire Earth. Under the leadership of Jiang Tian, the Myth Alliance believed in the power of the people and never deliberately hid any news. Of course, when Jeffrey was in power, these principles were all empty talk. Besides, the space city of the Beidou Star was not far from Earth and could be seen clearly with a telescope. Even if they wanted to hide it, they couldn't. After the Beidou Star's invasion began, the Myth Alliance immediately released the relevant information. When those images were exposed, people were completely shocked. They saw the sky was densely packed with small black spots like ants and locusts. Every black dot, upon magnification, was a gigantic warship with a radius of 10 miles. Just one of them had the terrifying power to crush the Black Eagle Federation, which was one of the strongest countries in the world. Not to mention there were hundreds of ships. It's over. Humans on Earth are doomed. The end of the world is here. I thought the end of the world would be in 2012, but it's in 2018. "Oh my God, I don't want to die." Billions of people felt their hands and feet cold. No matter how optimistic they were and how confident they were in Zhang Tian and the Earth civilization, they couldn't help but feel cold at this moment. Because the ships of the Beihan sect were too terrifying and magnificent. There were more than a dozen soul formation cultivators and even Han Ming Zongzi. That was simply terrifying. How could they resist? Where's Kong Te? He should do something. At this moment, everyone looked at the Tianqing school hoping that Zhang Tian would do something. Then the Myth Alliance released the news. Leader Kong Techu is in seclusion. He won't do anything for the time being. When the news was released, the entire world was in an uproar. In a blink, it occupied the top 10 trending topics. Countless netizens were discussing it and panicking. What? Kong Techu won't do anything? He chose to cultivate in seclusion at this time. Is he scared? Or was he injured in the previous battle? If he doesn't do anything, humans on Earth won't have any chance of winning. These people treated Zhang Tian as the pillar that supported the Earth, the needle that stabilized the world. Their reaction was actually understandable. There's always a substitute when playing basketball, let alone in a war. Kong Techu has been fighting continuously since he came back and defeated Jeffrey, Zhou Xian and many other traitors. Even if he's made of iron, he would be tired. The enemy has just arrived. Of course, he needs to rest and recharge his energy. Don't panic. As long as the leader of the Taichu Alliance is on Earth, we don't have to worry. It's not the time for the final battle yet. We have to save our trump card for last. Zhang Tian's close friends such as Shenlu, Lu Yiting and Lady Wu, as well as the officials such as Canes and Qinyang, all of them gave some explanations to calm the people down and stabilize the situation. They didn't want the Earth to be in chaos again. What seclusion? It's just an excuse. Kong Techu is obviously scared. He doesn't dare to face Han Ming Zongzi at all. However, some people didn't listen to those explanations at all. They sneered and cursed. That's right. At this distance, the army of the Beihan sect will arrive on Earth in 3 days. What's the use of cultivating in seclusion at this time? If it's not an excuse, then what is it? Maybe. He must have abandoned Earth and run away. He swore that he would drive the cultivators from other planets out of the solar system. But in fact, it's just a slogan. It's not uncommon to see this kind of thing. In fact, it's just an excuse. He's just greedy for power and wants to be the leader of the Myth Alliance. When Han Ming Zongzi arrives, I'm afraid he will bow down in a few minutes. Isn't it too late to be afraid now? How can the ants on Earth be a match for the gods from other planets? What a joke. These people had seen the endless power of the cultivators from other planets and had been completely brainwashed by them. They regarded the humans on Earth as ants and worshipped the cultivators of the Dipper sect as gods. Many of them were die-hard fans of Zhou Xian Jeffrey and Han Ming Zongzi. Just as everyone was mocking him, the first clash between the Earth and the cultivators of the Dipper sect had already happened. Tens of thousands of crystal battleships were deployed 800,000 kilometers away from Earth. They formed a rectangular formation of the Myth Alliance's fleet and were equipped with the latest Kuelian missiles. They also formed a nuclear weapon array with large nuclear weapons. In fact, after Han Ming Zongzi declared war, the nuclear weapons stored by the superpowers on Earth had all been transported over in the past few days. This line of defense was the accumulation of all the nuclear weapons on Earth. For the sake of survival and the continuation of their civilization, Earth was like a crazy gambler who had chosen to stake everything on a single throw. When a 5-kilometer class crystal battleship of the Beihan sect called Descender entered the range of the attack. As Canes gave the order, suddenly, tens of thousands of crystal battleships on Earth fired their cannons at the same time. The Kuelian missiles shot out beams of light that could melt gold and iron. They tore the sky apart and hit the Descender. In the meantime, the nuclear arrays within 10 square kilometers swarmed forward and exploded, drowning the crystal warship, Descender. The energy of this attack was extremely terrifying. It was enough to tear apart a small planet or a satellite like the Moon. But when the smoke dissipated, everyone was shocked to see that the Descender was like a tank. Although there were some stains on the surface of the Descender, it was still intact. It was like a tank that had been hit by an egg. It floated silently in the sky and seemed to be eternally immortal. It seemed to be silently mocking the ignorance and weakness of the civilization on Earth. When the image was transmitted to Earth, At this moment the entire planet was in dead silence. Everyone trembled and their hearts were filled with despair. Even the hawkish figures such as Canes, Lotus, and Jiang Chongqing couldn't help but show a trace of fear in their eyes. Chapter 1755. The nuclear weapon array set up on Earth's defense line uses strategic nuclear weapons with a yield of 10 million tons. The array is very dense, so it uses controllable nuclear fusion technology to form a concentrated and precise attack. It should be enough to kill a nascent soul overlord. However, the enemy's array pattern is extremely high-end, equivalent to the level of a Taoist artifact or even higher. The energy shield formed by the Dharma laws and essence chi is equivalent to the defense of a soul formation cultivator. So it can't be broken at all. In the media's live broadcast room, military industry experts accepted the media's interview and gave various data analysis with a pale face. It sounded frightening. Only the 5 superpowers in the world have reserves of strategic nuclear weapons with a yield of 10 million tons. In order to set up this defense line, the 5 superpowers have exhausted everything. Controllable nuclear fusion technology is the highest achievement of Earth's science and technology since the recovery of spirit chi, but now, the beautiful host, who was originally quite professional, had changed her expression under great psychological pressure. Cold sweat poured down her forehead and she was so frightened that she couldn't maintain her composure. Yes, the last trump card of Earth's science and technology has been played. But unfortunately, this trump card is not worth mentioning for the enemy. The military expert wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and smiled bitterly. His eyes were full of despair. His words were heard. Billions of people on Earth turned pale and countless people panicked. The first-generation Kuelian system can kill a golden core cultivator. After several years of development, the latest Kuelian system can seriously injure or even kill a normal soul formation overlord. But unfortunately, the array of runes on the descender is a supreme-grade Taoist artifact that surpasses the defense of an ordinary soul formation cultivator. The latest Kuelian is useless. Zhang Qinzhen, the president of the Sidoni Academy of Sciences, also accepted the interview. He faced the camera and sighed. He had tried his best. But the cultivation civilization on Earth had been flourishing for too short a time. A lot of materials hadn't been excavated and a lot of ideas hadn't been put into practice yet. Of course, they were at a disadvantage when facing the Beidou invaders, who had a long history of cultivation and were well prepared. The latest Kuelian system can't form an effective attack. What should we do? When Zhang Qing'an's words were heard, the entire Earth was gloomy and countless exclamations were heard. Countless people fell into deep fear, unable to extricate themselves. The descender was just the vanguard ship of the Big Dipper army. The main force of the Beihan sect was behind it. There were more than hundreds and thousands of such ships. They were densely packed and innumerable. Next, Sasaki Kaisha announced to Earth the latest observation and specific data of the invading fleet. 2 planetary-level space cities. Each of them had a diameter of over 10,000 miles. Once it descended, it would be able to cover half of the Earth before the recovery of spirit chi. In other words, the space city would not need to use any attacks at all. It could directly crash down and cover the Earth tightly, and all living creatures would die an unnatural death. 10 satellite-class bastions. Each fortress had a diameter of over 1,000 miles. Its area was equivalent to a small country before the recovery of spirit chi. There were 800 100-kilometer-class crystal warships. Any crystal warship could raze the super cities on Earth such as New York and Shanghai to the ground with brute force if it landed directly. It was estimated that there were more than 100 nascent soul realm heaven monarchs. More than 10 soul formation and divine lords. Once the news was out, countless people were terrified to the extreme and were scared out of their wits. Every single number that was spat out caused the entire world to tremble. How powerful was this force? It was strong enough to move mountains, fill oceans and flatten the sun and the moon. Even Earth before the recovery of spirit chi would be crushed like an egg under a giant rock. Even the legendary ruins of deity would be a bit inferior. Facing the ferocious battleships of the Beihan sect that were armed to the teeth, the people on Earth were extremely frightened and didn't feel safe at all. In front of such an enemy, the conventional military on Earth and the Kuelian system that combined cultivation and technology seemed to be vulnerable. Who can resist the invasion of the Beihan sect? Who dares to resist the powerful Beihan sect? At this moment, countless people were screaming, and there were even people saying that doomsday was coming. Many people were so desperate that they couldn't bear the psychological pressure and chose to commit suicide. Besides, Han Che told the senior members of the Myth Alliance. Those invading ships were only part of the Beihan sect. The Yuntian Palace and the other space city were Han Ming's foundation. Those weren't all the cultivators of the Beihan sect in the solar system, because behind them, there were also the Immortal Hall, the Feiyang sect and the Wuji sect, which were as powerful as the Beihan sect. They had built many unknown bases in the entire solar system. But this news wasn't announced to the public. The confidence of the people on Earth had completely collapsed. If it was announced now, it would probably cause more serious internal strife and incidents. Earth's space defense line, retreat 300,000 miles and return to the atmosphere immediately. At this time, Zhou Xian, who was flying quickly to space on the rising sun, gave an order to Keynes through a communication Dharma artifact. Madam, Keynes was extremely worried and hesitant. He certainly knew that the Kualian and the controllable strategic nuclear rectangular array couldn't effectively resist the Beihan sect's battleships. If they stayed in front of Earth, they might be able to kill some nascent soul cultivators after the space battle. That was the best use of everything. However, this meant that Zhou Xian was fighting the entire space fleet of the Beihan sect alone. The risk of dying was extremely high. Zhou Xian's face was full of determination. She controlled the rising sun to fly quickly and said softly, "General Keynes, this is an order. I'm giving you this order as the acting leader of the Myth Alliance." Yes. Keynes' expression turned solemn, and he suddenly put his feet together, stood up straight and saluted Zhou Xian. "All the commanders and soldiers of the Earth Defense Coalition Army and all the cultivators of the Myth Alliance pay their highest respects to Madame Zhou Xian. Take care. We're counting on you." Countless commanders murmured with tears in their eyes. Then Keynes gave the order to retreat. The battleships and controllable nuclear arrays of the Earth Defense Force all retreated. They're retreating? They're retreating without a fight? Are they going to let the Beihan sect's battleships land on Earth and kill people? When the image of the Earth Defense Allied forces retreating in an orderly manner was transmitted, the entire Earth was in a state of despair. Countless people were shivering, banging their heads against the ground as they wailed miserably. This was a disaster that could destroy the world. The invasion and suppression of such a powerful civilization had never happened in the history of mankind. Even the heavenly state and other multidimensional worlds near the solar system weren't so cruel and terrifying. Who could bear it? Why should we retreat? We're ready to fight. We're ready to die. We'd rather die in space than be a lamb at the mercy of others. Our home is behind us. Are we going to let them burn our homes, our homeland? Even the soldiers in the battleships of the Earth Defense Coalition forces, although they had to obey the order, were desperate and angry in their hearts. Tears streamed down their faces as they gritted their teeth and felt extremely aggrieved. They hated. They were angry. But they didn't know who to hate. They didn't know who to be angry at. The humans on Earth are smart after all. That's how it should be. Don't resist. From the descender, there were echoes of the great Tao that could interfere with the world and disrupt the laws of nature. They were transmitted directly to the crystal ships of the Myth Alliance and, using them as intermediaries, transmitted to all the communication devices of the people on Earth. In a blink, the voice resounded across the Earth. "The fleet in front of you is only a part of the Beihan sect. You can't resist it. Besides, there's still the base behind us. Kong Teichu, are you scared? Come here immediately and apologize sincerely. Han Ming is always merciful and compassionate. He won't hurt the innocent and forgive the sins of others. Otherwise, we'll kill everyone on Earth." The owner of this voice was complacent and brimming with great confidence and even arrogance. He looked down upon the world and all living beings as if the entire Earth was just a mud ball that he could casually crush, and as if Jiang Tian was just an ant that he could casually crush. Hearing this, everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Sect Master of the Boundless Sect. Divine Lord Boundless, a peak stage soul formation cultivator. I'm afraid that the sect masters of the Snow God Palace, the North Pole sect and the Huangyuan sect will also come. Even the cultivators of the North Star sect, such as Hanch Divine Prince and Qin Shi Fairy, looked frightened. Jiang Chongging, Lotus Relay and the others were also worried. This was going to be a tough battle, an extremely tough one. I regret letting Qing'er go alone. Zhang Wanqing was already in tears. At this moment, the crystal battleships of the Myth Alliance in outer space were silent and they couldn't respond. After a long time, it felt like a moment, but more like 1,000 years. Ask my husband to apologize to you and repent sincerely? What crime did he commit? Kill everyone on Earth? Do you really think the Beihan sect is powerful enough to do that? All of a sudden, a shout rang out from the space battlefield. The soldiers and commanders of the battleships of the Myth Alliance were stunned. A gigantic purple-bronze interstellar warship flew over at high speed, brushing past them as they retreated. The battleship was 100 miles wide and had a complicated structure. It was covered with ancient runes and there were all kinds of large Dao artifacts on it. There were traces of swords and blades on it. Apparently it had been through hundreds of battles. On both sides of the battleship stood many nascent soul zombie soldiers and 100 soul formation zombie generals. Every single one of them was clad in heavy armor and wore helmets that looked like bull horns on their heads. Some of them were badly mutilated and their tendons and bones were exposed. Some of them had ferocious expressions, some of them had red eyes that shot out explosively, some were completely gloomy, and some emitted monstrous baleful auras and auras of death. Immediately, an evil, bloodthirsty and violent energy filled the air. What's that? It seems to be the battleship of the deity ruins controlled by Zhou Xian. Everyone was stunned, shocked and full of admiration. No one had expected that. When the entire Earth was defeated and no one could defeat them, Zhou Xian went against the flow and faced the terrifying fleet of the Beihan sect on her own. What kind of peerless grace was this? What kind of courage and fortitude was this? What kind of breadth of mind was this? Chapter 1756. The unsetting sun was extremely fast. In just a few minutes, it had traveled 100,000 miles and was only 1,000 miles away from the arrival. Then, not only the soldiers on the battleships of the Myth Alliance saw it, but also the billions of people on Earth saw it through the images sent back by the large surveillance Dharma artifacts. Zhou Xian walked out of the cabin and stood proudly on the unsetting sun. One person and one battleship faced the endless army of the Beihan sect. It was as if a peerless sword had been unsheathed. The sword light was 100,000 miles away. At this moment, everyone on Earth was speechless. Countless people were dumbfounded and shocked. They were so moved that tears streamed down their faces. She's so magnanimous. She's worthy of being Jiang Taichu's woman. Old Rulai Lotus's blood was boiling and his mind was agitated. He felt that all the women he had seen in the past 1,000 years paled in comparison to Zhou Xian. Looks like you are the legendary Mrs. Jiang. The arrival slowed down and finally stopped 100 miles away from Zhou Xian. An old man with white hair and a white beard in a simple linen robe stepped out. The laws around him surged and he gave people a feeling that he was in control of the world. Divine Lord Wuxia. He appeared. He stood proudly in the void in front of the ship. His eyes were as deep as the stars. He looked down at Zhou Xian and said in a low voice, "Are you not afraid of us? Aren't you afraid of death?" "I'm not afraid of death. Why do you have to be afraid of death?" Zhou Xian's clothes fluttered and she said calmly, "My husband is in seclusion and has no time to entertain guests from afar. So I, as the hostess, should be the one to meet you. Otherwise, wouldn't it be too rude?" "I didn't expect a woman to be so bold." Divine Lord Wuxia exclaimed. "Kong Taichu has a cultivation partner like you. I'm so envious." "Cut the crap. My husband ordered you to leave the solar system, but it seems like you treat it as a joke. So be it. Today I will show you the strength of the human race on Earth. I will also let you know that Earth is not something that you rascals can covet." After Zhou Xian finished speaking, she suddenly soared into the sky. Long saber. Unsheathing. This saber was called Flowing Fire. It was made from the 9 flying swords that Jiang Tian had given her. It had killed more than a dozen soul formation divine lords when it fought against the heavenly Mu divine general and the other overlords of the ruins of immortality. Over the past few years, it had been continuously infused with heavenly materials and earthly treasures. After meeting up with Jiang Tian in the ruins of immortality, Jiang Tian had refined it many times and it had reached the level of a Dao artifact. "Stupid woman, do you really want to fight against the entire fleet of the Beihan sect by yourself?" Sir God Wuxia found it funny and shook his head. His eyes were filled with contempt. In the face of a strong enemy, having a backbone and fighting spirit was naturally worthy of respect. However, if he still didn't know how to be flexible and fought to the death when faced with an opponent with a great disparity in strength, he would be an idiot who didn't know what death was. She's courting death. Stupid people from Earth. Countless cultivators on the descender shook their heads and sneered. In their eyes, Zhou Xian was like an idiot who was throwing an egg at a rock. So what? Zhou Xian quickly closed in and shouted while waving her saber. As she shook her blade, countless Dharma laws rumbled and the sky within a 10-mile radius shook. The stars in the sky swayed as if they were about to fall. Inside her body, the divine treasures rumbled and the deity shouted. A giant shadow of a divine phoenix formed by deity-grade Dharma laws appeared behind her. Then it was infused into her body, providing her with endless energy to fight. Her deity body let out a bright light. What? She's a soul formation grand cultivator? I can't believe there's a soul formation grand cultivator on Earth with no cultivation methods. Divine Lord Wuxia looked surprised. His deep eyes glittered and there was a hint of solemnity and admiration on his face. Earth was in the early stages of the spirit chi recovery. Its essence chi was rich and its Dharma laws were solid, comparable to the cultivation sacred grounds in the Beidou Star region and even the Milky Way, which could help cultivators advance rapidly. However, the problem was that Earth's spirit chi had been declining for more than 100,000 years, ever since planet destruction arrived. The spirit chi was exhausted and the Dharma laws collapsed. For a cultivation civilization, it was like water without a source or a tree without roots. It couldn't support itself. So, even if Earth was full of spirit chi, it couldn't cultivate powerful cultivators. Golden core cultivators were extremely rare and nascent soul cultivators were already at the peak. So, when Divine Lord Wuxia saw a soul formation cultivator, he was shocked as if a Harvard student had appeared in a primitive tribe on Earth. This must be the cultivation art Kong Teichu taught her. But her speed of improvement is too terrifying. A soul formation grand cultivator under 100 years old is extremely rare even in the Beidou Star region. Kong Teichu must be killed. Otherwise he'll become a big problem sooner or later. Many thoughts flashed through Divine Lord Wuxia's mind. He became more serious and his viciousness became more intense. The divine treasures in his body rumbled and the vast power of Dharma laws gathered, causing the air within a few miles to collapse and distort. It was earth-shattering. Zhou Xian moved along with her saber and displayed the divine phoenix dance of the ninth heaven footwork which had reached the pinnacle. With an indomitable and unstoppable momentum, the long saber slashed at Sir God Wuxia's original body. Wuxia, go. At that moment, Divine Lord Wuxia was enraged and he launched all kinds of Dharma laws. Nomological laws manifested one after another. Flood dragons, ferocious beasts, divine shields, lightning bolts, mountains and so on. They all tried to stop the flowing fire saber, but they all crumbled and shattered under the saber. Back off. In the end, Divine Lord Wuxia had no choice but to step into the sky and hide in the sky, retreating 100 miles away and barely dodging Zhou Xian's slash. The descender couldn't dodge in time and a giant hole was torn open. Fire burned the sky and countless nascent soul heavenly lords died in an instant. Only a few hundred nascent soul cultivators escaped in small flying ships. With one slash, the descender and the divine lord from another planet retreated 100 miles. Furthermore, even though Sir God Wuxia had dodged the attack and didn't injure his core, he was still in a very sorry state. His silver hair and beard were burnt black and curled up. His simple hemp clothes were torn and tattered. Even his crystal-clear body that was like porcelain had traces of being burnt and cracked. The divine phoenix's flowing fire Dharma laws kept running on his wounds, as if it were an indestructible purgatory world. Even though he used all kinds of Dharma laws to heal himself, he still couldn't do anything. Mistress is invincible. She's a peerless beauty. She's so powerful. There's hope for Earth. Earth won't be destroyed. She's indeed Kong Teichu's woman. I never thought that not only did Kong Teichu have a divine lord, but his wife has also become a divine lord. Even the divine lord from another planet was defeated by her slash. Both of them are peerless divine lords. What a story. When the image of the battle was transmitted to Earth, Billions of people on the planet cheered and their emotions immediately changed from despair to excitement. Countless people were so excited that they burst into tears. They waved their arms and cheered. Their shouts shook the sky and stirred up the clouds. What an evil woman! Divine Lord Wuxia was so angry that his hair stood on end. He couldn't accept such a failure. He was the sect master of the Wuxia sect, a peak-stage soul formation cultivator and the vanguard of Han Ming, a Zhongzi from the Beihan sect, but he was defeated by a woman from Earth. That feeling was like a brawny man being knocked down by a 3-year-old girl with a brick. What a disgrace. He felt he had lost all his face. How could he not be angry? However, before Sir God Wuxia could regroup and attack, Zhou Xian's clear and melodious voice suddenly rang in his ears. "Old man, you'd better catch it." Whoosh. As Zhou Xian slashed out, the sky trembled as if it was about to be torn apart. Chapter 1757. He had never thought that Zhou Xian would be so terrifying before he came. Of course, they had also learned about Jiang Tian and his wife's achievements from Jeffrey, Zhou Xian and the others on Earth, including how they crushed the ruins of deity, but they didn't take them seriously. Even Luo Chen, the Zhongzi of the Saint Era Sword sect, could become the sword god of the ruins Emperor Palace in the ruins of deity and be called the ancestral lord. And Luo Chen was nothing in front of Han Ming and Zhongzi. The empire of the immortal ruins in the Milky Way was a decadent and backward cultivation civilization. They didn't even have the ability to go out of their star field and conquer other star fields. None of them were even listed on the Milky Way list. Rumor had it that Jiang Tian had killed hundreds of soul formation cultivators in the ruins of deity, but Divine Lord Wuxia still didn't take Jiang Tian seriously. Those were just ordinary soul formation cultivators without a grade. So what if they were at the peak? As a 9th grade soul formation cultivator, Divine Lord Wuxia thought he was also capable of suppressing the ruins of deity on his own. He only became vigilant when he heard that Jiang Tian had killed the 4 divine lords, including Ta Jian and Gang Hua. But that was Jiang Tian, not Zhou Xian. So from the start till the end he did not take Zhou Xian to heart. Even if she was a soul formation cultivator when she was born, it had only been a few decades. But after the fight he finally realized how terrifying Zhou Xian was. He swore that if he had known that, he wouldn't have been so careless. He would have joined forces with the other divine lords to attack Zhou Xian. Damn it! Divine Lord Boundless looked as if he was facing a great enemy. The precepts and great paths around him roared endlessly, almost boiling. The precepts in his body were condensed to the extreme, and the god in his body roared to the sky. From the wide sleeves of his linen robe, he took out a jade-green, crystal-clear sword that seemed to be able to measure the heavens and earth and trigger the endless great paths. As soon as the sword was drawn, all the laws and great Taoists within a radius of 50 kilometers were sucked away, causing this world to be annihilated. It was as if it had been taken away out of thin air, forming an extremely deep and dark black hole that seemed to be connected to an alternate world. As for the sword, it gave off a bright light. Boundless condensed laws formed and soared into the sky. Its aura was even stronger than that of the flowing fire saber, faintly suppressing it. The sword's name is Immeasurable. It was refined by the ancestor of the Boundless Divine Sect, the Boundless Divine Lord, for 3,000 years. It is capable of condensing the boundless laws and grand Taoists of the world, carrying out punishment on behalf of the heavens, wielding the heavenly Tao and transforming it into a single strike. Divine Lord Wuxia raised his eyebrows and shouted proudly, "This sword has killed 33 Divine Transformation Realm Divine Lords, including 2 at the peak of the 9th grade Divine Transformation Realm. Little girl, you will be the 34th. A top-grade Tao artifact." At this moment on Earth, Elder Pan Xing and Yuan Zhenkong, who used to be from the Boundless sect, were staring at the battle screen in disbelief. Boundless Divine Lord is really going all out this time. He even took out the most precious treasure of his sect. This treasure has always been sealed in the sect and is used as the base of the array. This sword is extremely fierce. It's called Immeasurable, which means it can store and use all kinds of laws. Once the sword is drawn out, it can instantly draw the laws of great Taoists within a 100-mile radius and gather them into a boundless attack. It's enough to destroy the world. What? It can even activate the immeasurable laws? That's terrifying. Mistress. Everyone felt chills down their spines and their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. They were all worried for Zhou Xian and didn't dare to think about it anymore. After Jiang Tian's preaching and the invasion of the cultivators from other planets, they already knew about it. Dharma laws and great Taoists were mysterious and difficult to control. So, only 1 in 10,000 cultivators entered the nascent soul level from the golden core level. Not only did they need enough cultivation resources, they also needed special talents, great opportunities, great wisdom and perseverance to have a chance to touch a Dharma law. The classification between nascent soul and soul formation was actually based on the Dharma laws and great Taoists one could touch and control. To be able to touch and activate half a strand of Dharma laws was already a grade in nascent soul. To be able to control 8 or 9 types of Dharma laws was a rank 9 nascent soul and could definitely step into soul formation. In the soul formation stage, to be able to control 8 or 9 complete Dharma laws was a rank 9 soul formation. It was clear that the more Dharma laws a cultivator could control, the more Dharma laws they could use. That was also a cultivator's pursuit. To be able to activate the immeasurable laws and draw out all the Dharma laws and great Taoists in an area was extremely terrifying and unheard of. It's a bit of an exaggeration to call it the immeasurable laws, but it's still possible to activate dozens of complete Dharma laws. Han Che Shenxi was more knowledgeable than Elder Pan Xing and Yuan Jiankong and knew some secrets, but he still didn't have it easy. But this sword is originally a creation of heaven and earth. It goes against heaven and earth, so it will naturally suffer a backlash from heaven and earth. It has to burn a god's blood essence as the price. After this sword is used, his cultivation and grade will drop permanently. Mistress, as long as you block this sword, you'll be able to kill him. Yes, as long as you block this sword. Lotus Life, Old Rely and the others all noticed that Divine Lord Boundless' chest seemed to have caved in. That should be the result of the shrinkage and collapse of the divine treasures and gods. However, facing this sword, Zhou Xian didn't block it at all. Instead, she continued to slash from afar without caring about her own safety. As the saber slashed down, the endless divine phoenix fire was compressed to the extreme. There were no flames burning the sky, but they condensed into an extremely blazing white halo that occupied the flowing fire saber. When the saber slashed past, it directly annihilated and collapsed pieces of space as if it could destroy everything. You're not dodging? Aren't you afraid of death? Not only Divine Lord Boundless exclaimed, but billions of people on Earth also exclaimed at the same time. I'm the world. There's no dodging or retreating. When facing a strong enemy, I'll just kill. Why should I be afraid of death? Zhou Xian was like a peerless goddess of war. She pressed forward fearlessly and her sword will was fierce and violent, not weaker than any man. You're courting death. Divine Lord Boundless directly activated the infinite sword. Instantly, many Dharma laws that had been condensed by the sword surged into the sky and raged. Every Dharma law was extremely heavy with an aura that could destroy everything. It could completely crush asteroids and sink continents. Kill. Zhou Xian moved along with the saber. Her entire being, together with the Phoenix Goddess, merged with the flowing fire saber into one. In the end, she transformed into a long rainbow-like saber ray that came crashing down. Clang. A terrifying sound shook the sky. The bright sword aura and the infinite sword collided heavily. Terrifying space fluctuations rose and the curvature was disrupted. Strange space holes formed and then collapsed, erupting into terrifying space storms. With the two of them as the center, an area with a radius of 1,000 miles turned into a void. Even space didn't exist anymore. According to the calculations of the supercomputers of the military on Earth, the collision between the two of them was 10 times more powerful than the explosion of the nuclear array of the battleships of the Myth Alliance. Each of those space collapses and storms could tear a normal soul formation cultivator to pieces, let alone a nascent soul cultivator. In total, they could even completely swallow a satellite the size of the moon. 10 collisions of such intensity could have brazenly pierced through the Earth before the recovery of spirit chi, or used the resulting space collapse to swallow the Earth, destroying planets with one strike. This is the ability of a soul formation cultivator. When the data was announced, the entire Earth, including mortals, cultivators and military experts, were dumbfounded and couldn't be more shocked. At this time, countless people realized. Once a soul formation cultivator entered the soul formation level, he would become a god in the human world. The soul formation level wasn't just a title like the immortal state warriors on Earth. It wasn't like the cultivators of the light sacred clan in the heavenly state. They were only at the foundation establishment level or the golden core level at most. But they also called themselves saints and sacred kings and sent people to earth to call themselves gods to attract the power of faith. Gods could control the world. They could also destroy the world and planets with one strike. They weren't gods or gods. What were gods? Where were they? When the space holes and storms erupted, many Dharma artifacts on the battlefield had already stopped working. They couldn't pass through the space holes and were directly swallowed. So, the images that people on Earth saw were interrupted for a few minutes. Where's he? Where's the image? Who won? For a moment they were full of worry. When the space stabilized and the storms disappeared, the images were restored. Everyone was stunned. Zhou Xian stood where she was. Her purple crystal armor had been torn apart, revealing her tender skin that was dyed in blood. There were terrifying cracks all over her body that were so deep that her bones could be seen. Divine blood dripped down and all kinds of laws coiled around her endlessly. They were like pythons that crazily bit and invaded her body. Mistress. Masteress. Goddess Xueqing. At this moment, countless people exclaimed. It was too heart-wrenching. It's okay. He's dead for sure. Zhou Xueqing's plump chest violently heaved a few times. Her red lips slightly opened as she spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Her clear and beautiful eyes were sparkling. She raised the blood-stained saber and pointed the tip of the saber at Sir God Boundless. Bitch crazy woman, if you hadn't tried so hard I wouldn't have hurt myself. Divine Lord Boundless raised his hand and pointed at Zhou Xueqing. His fingers trembled violently and his face was complicated. There was fear before death, sadness, unwillingness and deep hatred. Yes. Hanche was right. For example, a doctrine artifact like the Infinite Sword, especially one that stole the fortune of the world, would often bring a terrifying backlash. In order to activate this supreme-grade doctrine artifact, Divine Lord Boundless didn't hesitate to burn his divine power. His cultivation instantly fell to the middle stage of the soul formation realm and his level was reduced to the 6th grade soul formation realm. It was easy for his level to fall. He could still rely on cultivation to return to the peak. But it was different when the level of the soul formation realm was reduced. There were too many factors involved in the level. It was determined from the nascent soul realm or even the golden core realm. If he wanted to return to the 9th grade, he had to start from the beginning. He might not even succeed if he started from the beginning. The price he had to pay and the risks involved were immeasurable. In other words, Divine Lord Boundless would basically be a 6th grade soul formation realm cultivator in the future. But he had no other choice. As long as he could kill Zhou Xueqing with this sword, it would be worth it. If he survived, he would win. However, he had never expected that Zhou Xueqing was still alive. Also, she took advantage of the fact that his level and cultivation had fallen and cut into his divine treasure. At this time, his divine treasure was collapsing and being burned by the divine phoenix fire. He knew that his divine treasure couldn't resist the attack of Zhou Xueqing's Dharma laws. He could only hold on for 10 seconds at most. The next moment, a trace of madness appeared on his face. He roared, "But you are also injured. These infinite Dharma laws will also erode your divine treasure. Now any soul formation realm cultivator, even the weakest one, will kill you." He looked up to the sky and laughed as if he was venting. "And do you know how many soul formation realm cultivators are in the fleet of the Beihan clan? You are dead." As soon as he said that, the billions of people on Earth turned pale. Chapter 1758. The Taichu Alliance Master was in seclusion and Zhou Xueqing was the only soul formation divine lord on Earth. And yet there were more than 10 soul formation divine lords of the Beihan sect. Even though Divine Lord Wuxia was powerful, he was only the vanguard. If Zhou Xueqing was severely injured because of him, her combat power would drop and she wouldn't be able to continue the fight. "Do you think that you can hurt me?" Zhou Xueqing sneered. All of a sudden, the phoenix goddess yelled and the shadow of a divine phoenix appeared behind her. All of a sudden, the laws of healing using the benevolent phoenix heart technique appeared. In the blink of an eye, it disintegrated and forced out the numerous laws that were left in his divine treasures and body. After that, his divine treasures and body instantly recovered as though he had never been injured. "What? How is that possible? You can dissolve the infinite laws." Sir God Wuxia was shocked. He sucked in a breath of cold air and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It was as though he had seen the most terrifying thing in the world. The Wuxia divine sect was one of the top 10 divine sects in the Mizang galaxy. Even though it was affiliated with the Beihan sect, it still controlled a few large planets with life. The sect master of such a sect wasn't an ordinary soul formation cultivator. He would be considered a supreme giant even in the Mizang galaxy. He had cultivated for a long time and stood on top of billions of people while looking down at the planets. He had fought countless battles in his life and once bathed the star ocean in blood. He had mastered countless secret arts. As for the sect's ultimate technique, the boundless and immeasurable mysterious art, it was known for its numerous transformations and was difficult to deal with. For example, when a law attacked an enemy, it was like a rope binding the enemy. It could be untied and broken. However, when dozens of laws attacked at the same time, even if each of them wasn't pure and tough, it would be like tying the enemy up with dozens of ropes and tying countless knots. It would be difficult for the enemy to break free. This was because many laws were mutually reinforcing and counteracting, interdependent, and could change in cycles. For example, when the enemy used the fire law of the 5 elements to destroy the wood law of the infinite law, the water and earth laws of the infinite law could take the opportunity to suppress it and the fire law could become stronger. In the end, it still couldn't be destroyed. Usually, after the enemy was injured, only 1 or 2 of the boundless laws would be destroyed. The remaining laws would have already pierced through the enemy's divine treasures and killed the god. That was why Divine Lord Wuxia had been able to dominate the Kaiyang galaxy with this ultimate skill. He was unrivaled and rarely met a worthy opponent, establishing himself as a supreme giant. But never had he imagined that Zhou Xian would actually disintegrate his boundless laws like a swift blade cutting through a tangled knot. This was simply unbelievable to him. How can an ant's bite make my battle prowess drop? Zhou Xian placed the flowing fire saber in front of her chest. Her lips parted slightly as she blew away the divine blood on the flowing fire saber. The droplets of blood floated in the air like red agates. She sheathed the saber and stood in the void. A trace of disdain appeared on her beautiful face. Could it be that you're a celestial divine transformation realm cultivator? Sir God Wuxia suddenly came to a realization and was extremely shocked. It was as if he had thought that Zhou Xian was a harmless little bunny, but after exchanging blows, he realized that she was a ferocious beast that could devour the heavens and earth. Not only was a deity-grade soul formation cultivator powerful, but he also had a shocking 90% chance of becoming a saint. He could even become a legendary Tao reunion perfected immortal who could look down on the world and travel through the universe as if he were walking on flat ground. Even in the Beidou planet region, there might not be one in 100,000 years. Who would have thought that there would be one in the solar system which was like a remote village with no cultivation systems? How could he not be shocked? However, he couldn't get an answer from Zhou Xian anymore. He couldn't withstand the burning of the divine phoenix fire. Cracks appeared on his body as he screamed. Then, endless flames came out of his body and burned him into ashes, completely disappearing from the world. What? Divine Lord Wuxia is dead. Run, run. He's a super-grade soul formation cultivator. I don't know if he's a sacred level cultivator or even higher. This is terrifying. The rest of the cultivators on Advent were so shocked that their souls almost jumped out of their bodies. Like stray dogs, they pushed their crystal shuttles and small warships to the maximum and fled in the direction of the bastion. Most of them were nascent soul cultivators or half-soul formation cultivators, who were much weaker than Divine Lord Wuxia. However, even Divine Lord Wuxia was killed by Zhou Xian with one slash. What could the other cultivators do? They were simply sending themselves to death. Saving their own lives was more important. That was different from the cultivators of the Beidou planet and the ruins of immortality. The cultivation systems of the ruins of immortality were indeed not as good as the Beihan sects, but they were facing a world-ending disaster. In order to survive, the cultivators of the ruins of immortality were extremely fierce. But the Beihan sect was different. They were only invading the earth. If they couldn't kill the enemy, they would immediately flee. There was no reason for them to die. The extraterritorial battlefield became empty for a moment. Only some warship wreckage and pitch-black meteorites floated in the air. There was no longer a single enemy in the world. Only Zhou Xian was left standing proudly. At this time, her body was curvy under the purple crystal armor. Her beautiful legs were slender and healthy. Her long hair was fluttering under the headband made of dragon skin. The soul-stabilizing stone inlaid on it was shining brightly, making her delicate face ripple with a gentle glow. Her watery eyes were full of determination and unyielding. She was giving out a powerful and holy vibe. In the eyes of everyone on earth, she was like a goddess who saved the world. That was right. A goddess who saved the world. At this time, hundreds of millions of people on earth had the same feeling. She was powerful as if she had been born and raised by heaven and earth. She was fearless. She had the courage to face the invincible enemies in the extraterrestrial world with her saber. She was full of mercy and kindness. She had experienced many vicissitudes of life, but her heart hadn't changed. Mistress 1. Goddess Xueqing 1. Wuya is dead. The enemy ran away. Zhou Xueqing is invincible. For a moment the whole earth was cheering. Billions of people on earth were crying. Many people were jumping and jumping. Excellent, excellent. Mistress, you fought so beautifully. We can hold our heads high. The daughter-in-law of the Jiang family is also good at fighting. She's not inferior to men. In Tianqing school, Lotus Tathagata was chanting Buddha's name. Situ Shao and the other disciples were overjoyed. Jiang Chongqing was comforted. He clapped his hands and laughed. The big black dog was jumping up and down with Jiang Beibei in his arms. Zhang Wanqing and the other women couldn't control their emotions and shed tears of excitement. Since Han Ming Zhongzi made a bold statement and completely turned hostile, everyone had been too depressed. Humiliation, uneasiness, fear, anger and other negative emotions shrouded their hearts like a dark cloud. It was like a big stone was pressing down on them. But now Zhou Xueqing had attacked head-on, killed Sir God Wuya and forced the descender to retreat. Everyone felt a long-awaited feeling of exaltation, and the gloomy clouds that had been pressing down on their hearts were swept away. She's a deity-level soul formation cultivator. She killed Divine Lord Wuya with 2 slashes. That's an instant kill. Oh my god. It's not enough that Earth has one monster, Kong Teichu. His wife is also a monster. Earth is really blessed. This is the strength of the Tai Chu Senior. Not only is he strong but he also has a supreme art. He can take the people around him to the ultimate level and ascend to the sky. As long as we're loyal, even a little bit of his guidance will be a great blessing. Even Han Che, Fairy Chenxi, and the others who had surrendered were full of praise. They could tell that Zhou Xueqing was definitely not to be underestimated, but they didn't expect Zhou Xueqing to win so beautifully. When they thought of the great benefits they could obtain by following Jiang Tian, all of them felt their blood boil and they were extremely excited. After the fight, Zhou Xueqing was very calm. She summoned the rising sun, entered the cabin and changed into a brand new armor. Then she sat cross-legged on the top of the ship with the flowing fire sword across her knees. She looked calm and sipped the green fire wine in a red wine gourd as if there was no one else around. She swallowed healing elixirs to replenish her energy and keep herself in the best state. The rising sun continued to move in the direction of the Beihan sect as fast as lightning. The wind of the universe blew her hair, which fluttered in the air like a black waterfall. She left a lonely figure to billions of people on Earth. Although there were thousands of people, she still went forward. She still dared to draw her sword. In the desolate universe, in the extraterrestrial battlefield, Zhou Xueqing was alone with a saber. She was facing the endless army that was brimming with murderous intent. However, she was still as calm as ever. She drank and pecked at ease. His confidence caused everyone to be endlessly shocked, and they all felt deep admiration for him. Chapter 1759. A day later. Finally, Zhou Xueqing and the second fleet of the Beihan sect encountered each other. An earth-shattering battle broke out again. This time, the Beihan sect sent 4 soul formation cultivators and each of them was as powerful as Divine Lord Wuya. The battle in space lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. The space battleships turned into steel and fireworks in the sky. Many nascent soul formation cultivators died and their bodies were scattered in space. Zhou Xueqing was covered in blood and she even sent Tianmu and the other soul formation cultivators. But the battle was in a stalemate. The 2 sides were evenly matched and they were still locked in a stalemate after 3 days. But everyone knew that this wasn't all the Beihan sect had. If more troops of the Beihan sect joined the battle, Zhou Xueqing would most likely die. Nervousness, uneasiness, fear, anxiety, anger and other emotions tugged at the nerves of hundreds of millions of people on Earth. Many people felt that the string in their heads was about to break. Is Kang Teichu still in seclusion? Zhao Xueqing might die if the battle goes on. Why isn't he out yet? 1 streak, 2 streaks, 3 streaks, 100, 1,000, 10,000, billions of people on Earth were looking at Sidoni, the Tianqing school and Jiang Tian with anticipation and anxiety. At this moment, no matter if they were male or female, young or old, rich or poor, black or white, everyone looked at Jiang Tian hopefully. They were looking at the overlord who had saved Earth time and time again. Meanwhile, Jiang Tian had reached the most critical moment of breaking through to the 5th level of the nascent soul level. 1, 2, 3. I've refined the blood of 100 soul formation cultivators. Soul formation cultivators were much more powerful than nascent soul cultivators. Soul formation cultivators were known as gods in the human world. They had already been blessed by the world and had become one with the world, as if they were gods nurtured by nature. It was no longer a mortal body but a body of Dharma laws. A drop of soul formation blood contained endless essence qi, the essence of the world, and turned into Dharma laws. It could easily kill a nascent soul cultivator and crush a golden core cultivator with a strand of hair. It would be a great fortune for normal nascent soul cultivators to get even a drop of soul formation blood. If he could refine a bowl of semi-god realm blood essence, he would be able to push his cultivation level up by 1 or 2 levels. In the meantime, Jiang Tian, who was deep inside the Tianqing school, consumed the blood of 100 soul formation cultivators when he broke through from the 4th level of the nascent soul stage to the 5th. It was like a baby eating a cow, which brought endless nourishment and improvement to his cultivation and strength. In the beginning, the refinement was a bit difficult. It usually took him 2 hours to refine the blood of a soul formation cultivator. But later it was as easy as swallowing a whale. He opened his mouth and directly refined the blood. The 9-orifice chaotic divine infant is indeed the most powerful nascent soul in the universe. The chaotic divine body is also the most powerful divine body. The consumption of each breakthrough is too terrifying. I thought I could reach the peak stage of the nascent soul level with so much soul formation blood in the ruins of deities, but it seems impossible. Jiang Tian looked calm and his eyes were flickering. He heaved a sigh of satisfaction. Is it possible that it's useless to devour normal soul formation cultivators for the next breakthrough? Do I have to be a 9th grade or even a sacred grade soul formation cultivator? At this moment, Jiang Tian's god body was crystal clear. Each of his cells was like a treasure trove, each drop of his blood was like a star, and each of his organs was like a star region that emitted a dazzling light. The shackles on his body were constantly broken and broken. He became more compatible with the principles of heaven and earth as if he had become one with the great Tao. The Dharma laws he had mastered had already surpassed the 9 divine laws on the divine disk. He was moving towards a broader, deeper and more mysterious Dharma laws, opening up many cultivation forbidden areas and even areas he hadn't mastered in his previous life. For example, the enormous power of his body that could move mountains and fill oceans, the supreme divine power that could pick the stars and capture the moon and break the dimension. The spirit sense of the 9-orifice chaotic divine infant, its instinct to avoid danger, and even the divine soul of the fiend god of prison were improving rapidly, opening the doors of Dharma laws one after another, peeking at their mysteries and touching and merging all kinds of Dharma laws. Jiang Tian was already very satisfied with his current state. The chaotic divine infant had already reached the phenomenal success level. Its 9 orifices seemed to be connected to the world, allowing it to devour and activate endless Dharma laws at any time. His divine body was only a piece of paper away from the phenomenal success level. Well, I'll break through the last barrier and reach the 5th level of the nascent soul level. Then I'll come out. Jiang Tian shook his head gently and stopped thinking too much. A hint of determination appeared on his face as he said softly, refine. The divine disk in his body spun like a millstone and the chaotic creation art was running crazily. The 9 orifices of the chaotic nascent soul were all opened. The vertical eye at the center of its forehead and both its eyes were glittering, speeding up the refinement of the soul formation level blood. It was moving towards a supreme level, breaking the invisible shackles, connecting the world and controlling Dharma laws and Dharma laws. At that moment he seemed to have traveled through the universe, condensed the universe and connected the past, the present and the future. He had a deeper understanding of life, death and thousands of Dharma laws and Dharma laws. Traces of Dharma laws and patterns appeared on the surface of his body, especially those on the 9-orifice nascent soul and the divine disk. They became even more complicated, as if they were creating a new world and nurturing chaos, as if a brand new universe was about to be born. My chaotic divine body has finally reached the phenomenal success level. At that moment he felt that his power was endless, as if he could blow up the sun with one punch and penetrate the earth with one finger. Of course, that was just an illusion due to the extreme strengthening of his body. He felt that he could face a sacred soul formation cultivator and let him kill him as he pleased. The latter wouldn't be able to do anything to him. The 9-orifice chaotic divine infant has also leveled up to the 5th level. Zhang Tian looked at the nascent soul and nodded with satisfaction. The 5th level of the nascent soul level was also a small milestone. The nascent soul before was like a naked baby that had just been born. The nascent soul then looked more like a 3 or 4-year-old child. It had grown hair and was wearing naturally formed clothes with many accessories. It was lively, cute and smart. Those clothes and accessories weren't to be underestimated. They weren't made for looks. They were the result of the condensation of Dharma laws. Each of them represented a connection with a Dharma law. If they were used, they would have a terrifying attack that could destroy the world. At that moment, the chaotic divine infant carried an aura that looked down on the world, as if it could break the sky and suppress thousands of worlds. The chaotic divine infant was like the child of a god. That was its true appearance. The divine soul of the demon god of prison has also reached the phenomenal success level. Zhang Tian was a bit surprised by that, because many divine souls of the soul formation cultivators in the ruins of immortality had been destroyed and couldn't be absorbed and used. When he cultivated, he used the divine souls of the 3 soul formation cultivators of the superbrain human race. He didn't expect their divine souls to be so vast and pure that they could push the divine soul of the demon god of prison to the phenomenal success level. The Beihan sect has already taken action. They're bullying my wife alone. Zhang Tian's immortal will was too strong. Even if he didn't deliberately activate it, he could sense everything that was happening outside. Do they really think that I, Kong Teichu, am a pushover? A glint of coldness flashed in Zhang Tian's eyes. Murderous intent shot up to the sky. Zhang Tian had just broken through 2 levels. His divine body, divine infant, divine law and immortal will had all been upgraded to the maximum. He had no place to use his vast Dharma power. Of course he had to go on a killing spree and let the Beihan sect know the consequences of messing with Kong Teichu. Chapter 1760. Keep an eye on the sect and watch out for the cultivators from other planets. I'm going to meet the army of the Beihan sect. Boom. Zhang Tian soared into the sky using the extreme speed of the Kunpeng. He was like a dragon that split heaven and earth, charging towards the battlefield outside the realm. Senior Taichu has come out. Yes, I think he's made another breakthrough. He's reached the 5th level of the nascent soul level. At this moment the entire Tianqing school was in an uproar. The 5th level of the nascent soul level. He's not an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. His breakthrough is too fast. It's just in time. The faces of Jiang Chongging, Lotus Relay, and the others were filled with joy. Zhang Tian had been able to kill soul formation cultivators before. This time he had broken through twice in a row and reached the ultimate level. His power was unimaginable. Who can defeat the sect master of the Taichu sect? He'll be able to defeat the enemies from other planets and avenge himself. Sasaki Haisha and the other disciples were determined. Their eyes were shining brightly. It's hard to tell who will win. The Beihan sect is well prepared this time. They've almost sent out all their forces. Only Han Shenxi's handsome face showed a hint of worry. Jiang Tian would be facing the entire army of the Beihan sect, the Huangyuan sect, the Snow God Palace, the Boundless sect and the Arctic sect. Even Divine Prince Han Ming might join the battle. Then he looked at the image of the battlefield sent by the Dharma artifact again. The coalition army of the divine sects of the Mizang galaxy was scattered in the sky, blocking the sun. There were countless of them. One of the space cities was enough to block the light of the sun as if there was a solar eclipse. It was like a star in space and there were 2 of them. There were 10 bastions in total and they looked like 10 moons that stretched across the sky. Around them, there are countless space battleships, each of which is not weaker than the rising sun. Every warrior in golden armor was apparently a golden core cultivator. Their energy stirred the sky and shook 100 miles, forming a rectangular formation. As for the nascent soul heavenly lords who were called ancestral patriarchs, there were even more of them. The most terrifying ones were the dozen or so divine emperors of the semi-god realm standing above the army. The laws coiled around their bodies while grand Tao fragments floated up and down. They were either dazzling like a sun that soared through the sky, a river that coiled around them, a vast small world that rose up behind them, mountains that coiled around them, or a moon-like moon that hung high in the 9 heavens. Almost every soul formation grand cultivator was a 9th grade soul formation grand cultivator and was at the peak. They could control Dharma laws and touch the grand Tao. They were unbelievably powerful. Even with Zhou Xian's resistance, they were still 300,000 kilometers away from Earth. The distance was very far, but both cultivators and mortals on Earth could feel the aura that shook the world above the 9 heavens. This time the cultivators of the freezing North sect and the 4 major immortal sects had arrived. Just looking at the divine beasts or mounts that pulled the carriages of the Sir Gods, they were no trifling matter. Each of them had the strength of an ordinary divine transformation realm warrior. People like Jeffrey and Zhou Xian were not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. They were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Some breathed out smoke, some were surrounded by lightning, and some raised gales that could kill a nascent soul stage cultivator with a sneeze. Their bloodlines were too terrifying. It's the bloodline of a divine beast. The 8-winged flying centipede, the red flame iron tiger and the black jade Kylan are all very rare descendants of divine beasts. They're usually kept in the depths of the immortal sects and not even the deputy sect masters are allowed to take them with them. I can't believe they're pulling carriages to Earth today. Looks like Han Ming Zongzi and the other sect masters are really angry. She shook her head. She had never seen such a terrifying scene either. Divine beasts were different from monsters. They were existences that dominated the universe. Any creature that was related to divine beasts would immediately become 100 times more valuable, like a sparrow flying to a branch and becoming a phoenix. It wasn't just because the bloodline of the divine beasts or their descendants were much more powerful than monsters of the same level. Every descendant of a divine beast would be born with a certain divine power of the divine beast. The divine powers of the divine beasts were far more powerful than normal Dharma spells. For example, the great chaos art of the Kun Ping and the Xianming water thunder of the Xianwu were all earth-shattering divine powers. So to speak, the divine beasts pulling the carriages might not be inferior to the divine lords in terms of fighting power. Just by looking at their arrival and their lazy eyes, many creatures and beasts on Earth who already had the cultivation of the golden core realm were trembling and crawling on the ground, not daring to move at all. This showed how terrifying the bloodline of the divine beasts was. Oh no, they're attacking. It's a few 100,000 miles and the Dharma laws are so strong. I'm worried that Fairy Xueqing will die before Senior Tai Chu arrives. Suddenly, Hanch Divine Prince's eyes widened and he exclaimed. Everyone looked at the screen and saw. The coalition army of the Beihan sect and the 4 immortal sects had already surrounded Zhou Xueqing's the rising sun. Zhou Xueqing was covered in blood and severely injured. Only half of the flowing fire blade was left. More than half of the 100 Soul Formation Corps generals including Tian Mu had died. Only 20 Soul Formation Corps generals could still fight. That wasn't strange because Tian Mu and the others were just normal Soul Formation cultivators before they were captured and refined into corpses. They didn't have a grade or a very low grade, so they were no match for the high-level Soul Formation cultivators in the Mizang Galaxy. After being controlled by the soul-swallowing immortal will, their intelligence deteriorated and their Dharma power and divine powers were also weakened. At that moment, a Soul Formation cultivator suddenly looked at Earth and whispered, "Oh no, this is bad. An overlord on Earth has come out. It should be Kong Teichu. We must capture Zhou Xueqing in time. Let's make him hesitate and lose without a fight." Divine Lord Bing Jian is right. Speed is the most important thing in war. Let's do it. Many divine lords nodded. Violent viciousness rose to the sky, shaking the sky and the stars seemed to be falling. Let's convince her one last time. This woman's body is extraordinary. If we can persuade her to surrender and let Han Ming Zongzi use her, it'll be a good thing. The divine lord who spoke was wearing an ice armor and standing on a chariot pulled by a black jade Kylan. Ice Dharma laws surrounded him and cold energy spread out, freezing the world. He was as powerful as Divine Lord Wuxia. He might even be more powerful. His face was covered by a helmet that seemed to be made of ice crystals. Only his eyes could be seen that were as cold as ice. His eyes were extremely cold as he spoke emotionlessly. Zhou Xian, are you still going to resist? Do you think you can stop them? Once the heavenly soldiers arrive, the entire Tianqing school will be crushed and there won't be a single living being left. I advise you to surrender now and I won't kill your husband. I'll let him have a place under Han Mingzongzi's command. That soul formation divine lord was the sect master of the Snow God Palace, Bingjian. The Snow God Palace on Earth was the sect he supported. He had once destroyed many sects of the Myth Alliance and killed many members. He had committed countless crimes. Before he could finish, Zhou Xian had already let out an angry roar and soared into the sky. Her petite body burst forth with endless divine brilliance. Under the terrifying phoenix dance of the ninth heaven footwork, the five-colored godly phoenix phantom and Zhou Xian suddenly pulled into a colorful rainbow. She broke through the void and stabbed her saber at the ice mirror divine sovereign. There was a loud rumble. The flowing fire blade went forward and turned into a rain of fire in a 10-mile radius. It flashed across the sky and pierced through the air, surrounded by Dharma laws, and smashed towards Divine Lord Bingjian. Zhou Xian slashed out with anger, bringing with her the grief and indignation of the tragic deaths of many of her companions and acquaintances. Her strength was extremely powerful. In the end, it almost turned into a fire that covered the world. That slash could even turn peak stage soul formation cultivators into ashes. Unfortunately, Divine Lord Bingjian wasn't a normal soul formation cultivator. He was the most powerful Divine Lord standing at the top of the soul formation cultivators in the Star Ocean. 9th grade. Peak. Besides, Zhou Xian had been fighting for 3 days and 3 nights in the attrition battle. She had slashed apart almost 100 crystal warships, heavily damaged a space fortress, and killed 3 divinity transformation stage cultivators and countless nascent soul stage cultivators. And yet he hadn't done anything since the beginning. His power and Dharma laws had been in perfect condition. Clang! Divine Lord Bingjian punched and knocked Zhou Xian away. She flew across hundreds of miles of space and smashed into the rising sun. With a bang, a huge hole appeared on the rising sun which could withstand the explosion of nuclear weapons. Zhou Xian's whole body crackled and cracked. She didn't know how many ribs were broken and blood spurted out from the corner of her mouth. You're just an ant. You don't know your own strength. Divine Lord Bingjia shook his head slightly as the corners of his mouth curled into a mocking smile. He punched and knocked Zhou Xian away as if he were brushing the dust off his clothes. It wasn't worth mentioning. Divine Lord Bingjian turned around and looked at the approaching golden aura. He was a bit shocked and then sneered. The Dharma laws on Earth are too strong after the spirit chi recovery. Although you're fast, it'll take you at least half a day to reach the extraterrestrial battlefield with your body. During that time we'll be able to capture your wife alive. Let's fight. After a clang, Zhou Xian flew out of the rising sun again. She was drenched in blood and she waved her saber to fight again. At that moment many cultivators on Earth, including Han Che, Qin Shi, Jiang Chongging, Lotus Relai and Situ Shao, looked extremely pale. They were both shocked and furious. If they weren't a match for Divine Lord Bingjian, they would have already fought with their lives. Mistress. Sasaki Haisha and Shin Mange both shed tears. Zhang Wanqing held back her tears and covered Jiang Beibei's eyes to stop her from watching. Jiang Beibei pushed her grandmother's hand away and looked at the screen with red eyes. She said in a childish voice, "Why did they bully Mom? Why did so many people bully Mom? We didn't bully them. What's the point of reasoning with invaders? If they wanted to reason with us, they wouldn't be invaders." Zhang Wanqing tried to cover her granddaughter's hand again. "Grandma, I want to watch. Even if Mom is going to be killed by them, I want to watch. I want to remember their faces and their names. One day I'll go to their hometown and avenge Mom." Jiang Beibei insisted with tears in her eyes. "They've gone too far. I can't stand it." The large black dog was so angry that he stood up on his hind legs. He pulled at his own hair and paced back and forth like a mad lion. Suddenly he roared and turned into a purple-gold true dragon. He rushed out into the skies wanting to fight alongside Jiang Tian. In the battlefield outside the realm, the battle had already reached its climax. Bing Jian used the laws of gods and was locked in a fierce battle with Zhao Xueqing. Zhao Xueqing, surrender and admit your guilt. You're no match for Divine Lord Bing Jian. If you surrender and kneel down to repent, you'll still have a chance to live. Otherwise, the entire Tianqing school, earth and the ruins of deity will be burned to ashes by Han Ming Zongzi's anger. Among the divine lords, the high-spirited Gu Mang divine lord spoke. Chapter 1761. The ancient Mang divine lord's sleeves fluttered in the wind. He had white hair and a white beard. He looked like an immortal, as if he were doing Zhao Xueqing a favor. In the end, he was almost heartbroken. It was as if Zhao Xueqing would be the sinner of the entire Tianqing school, the entire earth and the entire abandoned planet region if she didn't give up. He was the sect master of the Huangyuan sect and had lived a long life. He had fought in the Star Ocean all his life and was good at psychological attacks. Right? Kong Teichu and Zhao Xueqing shouldn't resist the cultivators from other planets for their own interests. Han Ming Zongzi doesn't want to destroy the civilization on Earth. Instead, he's trying to improve the cultivation arts on Earth. Kong Teichu and his wife are fighting so bravely for their own interests, aren't they? They're afraid that they'll lose control of the Myth Alliance. I think Han Ming Zongzi might not punish them if they surrender now. He might even let them be the Alliance Master of the Myth Alliance. After hearing that, many fans of the cultivators from other planets on Earth started to clamor again. Many cultivator orthodoxies and even many cultivators in the Heavenly Clear Sect's main hall were shaken by the idea of betrayal. They couldn't be blamed for having such thoughts. If the large sect sent a battleship with dozens of half-dead soul formation cultivators like the Heavenly Mu Divine General of the Dynasty of the Ruins of Immortality, then the local cultivators on Earth would only stand behind Jiang Tian and fight against the Beidu Divine Sect to the end. There were 2 new godly monarchs on Earth, so why would they be afraid of some half-dead godly monarchs? However, now the 5 divine sects had joined forces to attack. Battleships were everywhere, gold core cultivators were everywhere, and nascent soul cultivators were everywhere. Many divine sovereigns were even riding divine beast bloodline war chariots. There were also star-level space cities and space fortresses. They were really scared. Even Hanch Divine Prince felt a bit scared, not to mention them. The ruins of immortality, which had been declining for 100,000 years, was already so terrifying. Kong Teichu had fought for 5 years before finally achieving victory. He was surrounded by perils as if he had narrowly escaped death. Not to mention the undying sects that had ruled over the foreign lands for millions of years, with countless generations of inheritances. They were truly the most powerful sects that stood in the sea of stars like divine mountains. Destroying the ruins of immortality was just a matter of a word from them. My knees are not that cheap. My bones weren't that soft either. Because I'm Kong Teichu's woman. I would rather die than surrender. I would rather die 100 deaths than take a step back. If you want to massacre Tianqing School or Earth, you'll have to do it over my dead body. Zhao Xueqing was pushed back time and time again by Divine Sovereign Ice Mirror, but she managed to draw her saber and rise again. The bones all over her body healed and broke again and again. Gradually, the terrifying laws of extreme cold invaded her internal organs and divine treasures, freezing her to the core. Her entire body was shivering, and laws of ice crystals formed all over her body. It was as if she was covered in ice and snow. Stubborn. Rotten wood can't be carved. The ancient Mang Divine Sovereign was so angry that he was shaking all over. He waved his hand and said, "Fellow cultivators, don't be polite with this crazy woman. Let's capture her together. If she puts up a desperate struggle and we can't capture her, then let's send her to the afterlife." Agreed. As soon as he said that, many divine sovereigns closed in on Zhao Xueqing from all directions. Monstrous killing intent swept across the sky, and more than a dozen kinds of laws turned into avatars that descended with the intention of capturing Zhao Xueqing alive to threaten Jiang Tian. "Hubby, I'm sorry. I couldn't hold on. I'm too tired. I tried my best, but I really couldn't hold on anymore. I hope you won't blame me." At that moment, Zhao Xueqing stood quietly in the void, holding the broken saber that was stained with blood and showing a sorrowful smile. Suddenly, she gritted her teeth and stopped blocking the attacks of the laws. Like a phoenix dancing in the sky, she charged towards the ancient Mang Divine Sovereign and the others. She's going to self-destruct. Retreat. The ancient Mang divine sovereign's expression changed drastically. He was right. Zhou Xueqing was going to self-destruct. Firstly, she didn't want to be captured and become a burden to Jiang Tian. She wanted Jiang Tian to be wary of her and put him in a difficult position. She knew how proud Jiang Tian was. On Earth he had defeated many cultivation orthodoxies, but he had never admitted defeat. In the solar system's dimensional worlds he had never been weaker than anyone. In the face of the terrifying ruins of immortality, he dared to draw his sword and fight for 5 years to become the master of the ruins of immortality. Why would he lower his head and admit defeat today? Also, Zhou Xueqing was extremely valiant. Since she couldn't win and was going to die in battle, she would kill as many as she could. Self-destructing is equivalent to suicide. No. Goddess Xueqing. Why? Earth has just recovered its spirit qi and you want to kill it so cruelly? Why? We didn't have any hostility, but you schemed to kill Earth's geniuses and elites. Why? You bullied the weak again and again. At this moment, countless people on Earth were shocked and moved. They shouted angrily at the Beihan sect and burst into tears. Qingya, you can't die. Beibei can't live without you. Jiang Tian can't live without you. The Jiang family can't live without you. Zhang Wanqing was already sobbing. She screamed at the communication jade tablet. Mistress, she's a merciful bodhisattva. Lotus Relai put his palms together and exclaimed. Jiang Chongging's face changed drastically. He wanted to say something and his hands trembled, but in the end he couldn't say anything. All he wanted to say was a long sigh and he seemed to have aged 100 years. Mom. Jiang Beibei gritted her teeth and tried to stop her tears from falling, but she couldn't. She could only wipe her eyes again and again because she wanted to remember the face of her mother's murderer. Honey, I'm sorry. I can't stand by your side anymore. Daughter, I'm sorry. I can't stay with you anymore. You must grow up healthily. Zhou Xueqing ignored the many nomological attacks descending from the sky. She closed her eyes slightly and stood there. Her body seemed to emit a holy light, like a fairy descending into the world. She was about to self-destruct. At this moment, countless people on Earth clenched their fists and tears welled up in their eyes. Countless cultivators from other planets laughed proudly. Many divine lords put up their defenses and waited for Zhou Xueqing to die. They didn't have good intentions, but they didn't expect Zhou Xueqing to be so stubborn. She would rather die than surrender. Zhou Xueqing's blood was special. If Han Ming Zongzi could take it, he might be able to reach the void return level and become a saint. Do you want to die? Aren't you afraid of Kong Teichu's woman? Aren't you afraid of Kong Teichu's anger? Suddenly, a voice filled with anger resounded through the world. Many of the law attacks that were rushing towards Zhou Xueqing exploded and were completely routed. Many powerful Sir Gods were thrown off their feet by the raging power. They retreated dozens of miles and their faces were filled with fear. Many golden core cultivators exploded on the spot. Even the nascent soul heavenly lords were protected by Dharma laws and didn't die on the spot. Many of them spurted out blood. The crystal warships and even the space fortresses that looked like stars staggered backward like small boats in the middle of a surging tide. Only the 2 space fortresses were as steady as Mount Tai. You're out? Zhou Xueqing abruptly opened her eyes and saw Jiang Tian standing beside her. Her voice involuntarily trembled in disbelief. Jiang Tian's plan was to cultivate in seclusion for 7 days, which was already very tight. It was difficult to refine the blood of a soul formation cultivator. He didn't expect to come out on the 5th day. Well, you've suffered. Jiang Tian touched Zhou Xueqing's face gently and performed the art of creation to help her break down the alien Dharma laws and expel them from her body to heal her wounds. The more Jiang Tian healed, the angrier he became. A terrifying viciousness rose to the sky. Chapter 1762. It wasn't that he couldn't disintegrate those laws and heal her wounds. It was just that Zhou Xueqing was too severely injured and the enemy's attacks were too vicious. If he had come a day later, Zhou Xueqing would have been half dead, not to mention that she would have been exhausted and injured in the battle and would have been attacked by the laws again. Ever since he was reborn, Jiang Tian had never been as furious as he was today. Honey, I didn't fight well. I've disappointed you. Seeing Jiang Tian's arrival, Zhou Xueqing didn't know why, but she felt exhausted and drowsy. In fact, A normal person's stamina and willpower would have completely collapsed after such a terrifying battle. It was Zhou Xian who had been holding on with her steel-like willpower. It was only because Jiang Tian was here that she felt that Earth was safe. That was why she felt so tired and weak. You've already fought very well. Jiang Tian kissed her on the forehead, smiled gently and praised her with sincerity. You alone, with a sword and a spaceship with only 100 corpse generals and a few hundred corpse soldiers, you defeated more than a dozen soul formation divine lords, more than 1,000 nascent soul heavenly lords and 100,000 soldiers outside Earth's gate without a single casualty. How is that not good? Really? I thought I didn't fight well. Zhao Xueqing smiled sweetly. At that moment she was like a young girl who had received great praise from her lover. She was overjoyed and felt that all the hardships and dangers in the past few days were worth it. This guy is so powerful. I'm afraid he's as strong as us. The ancient Mang Divine Lord's expression changed and he became alert, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Just now, more than a dozen soul formation Divine Lords had attacked together. How terrifying was that? It was enough to destroy a planet with life. However, Jiang Tian had actually shattered all the laws with a shout. That was simply too terrifying. Let's go while he's healing his wife. Now's the time. Divine Lord Bingjian's eyes were as sharp as a sword and his killing intent was overflowing. This guy is only at the 5th level of the nascent soul stage, but he is as powerful as a divinity transformation stage cultivator. His bloodline is very special and his cultivation art is even weirder. If we can capture him, drink his blood and interrogate him about his cultivation art, we will definitely gain great benefits. The sect master of the North Pole sect, Sir God Xiaoyu, had Mou floating behind him. A sinister aura filled the air. His face was ferocious and his eyes were filled with greed. Hehe. When a lion fights a rabbit it still has to use all its strength. Xiue, if you consider taking his flesh and blood and don't kill him with all your strength, you may be killed by him. In this old man's opinion, don't think too much. Just kill him. One of the grand elders of the Boundless sect, Divine Lord Bai Yi, said coldly. Sir God Wuya was the illegitimate son he had with the previous sect master's wife. That was his own son, but he had died at the hands of Zhao Xueqing. Of course he wanted to take revenge. Yes, Divine Lord Bai Yi's words make sense. Kill him while his wife is sick. Many Sir Gods nodded. They quickly reached a consensus. That was because no one could guess Jiang Tian's strength. But he was definitely very strong. Since they couldn't figure out his strength, they had to hold nothing back. And just as the Sir Gods were about to attack, Jiang Tian suddenly retracted his palm and stood with his hands behind his back. He said indifferently, Fellow Taoists, are you ready to be killed by me? What? He has already cured Zhao Xueqing. At that moment, many Sir Gods felt like they were in a difficult position. They couldn't believe it. Their conversation was carried out with their divine consciousness. The moment they thought of it, the other party would immediately sense it. Their conversation just now only lasted for a few seconds, but Jiang Tian had actually disintegrated all the laws in Zhao Xueqing's body in such a short time. That was simply too terrifying. Hubby, I'll fight alongside you. We have always fought side by side. Zhao Xueqing felt that she had already recovered. Although she hadn't reached her peak, she was close. No. It's different this time. Jiang Tian shook his head and said, You fought in the first half and killed a few Sir Gods. I'll be responsible for the second half. You can kill a few more Sir Gods, but I might not have killed as many as you. Hubby, are you going to compete again? Zhao Xueqing suddenly cracked a smile. She thought back to many years ago when she had just activated the potential of the immortal phoenix body through the D-New flower. At that time, the Great Circle had released the hidden flower and hundreds of assassins from all over the world had gathered in China to hunt down Jiang Tian. She and Jiang Tian had started a killing competition in Gold City. Back then she was still a little girl who would vomit and tremble after killing someone. In the blink of an eye, he had grown into an expert who could fight against an army of 10,000 by himself. Earth had also undergone great changes and too many things had happened. Yes. You're a soul formation cultivator and I'm just a nascent soul cultivator, but I'm also a competitive and ambitious young man. Jiang Tian smiled and said. So I want to compete with you. You're still a young man. You're almost 40. Zhao Xueqing teased him, but she still went into the rising sun obediently. How dare you? How arrogant. You don't know what's good for you. Seeing this scene, Bing Jian, Xie Gumang Pai Yi and the other divine lords all became furious and shouted. Even a clay Buddha would be angry, not to mention that they were all respected and arrogant peerless Sir Gods. They were furious when Zhang Tian and his wife looked down on them. In a blink, a battle broke out. Kong Teichu, I'll kill you to avenge Sect Master Wuya. Go! Divine Lord Pai was the most resentful and vicious. He took the lead and attacked Zhang Tian. He also had boundless Dharma laws and his level was a bit higher than Divine Lord Wuya's. When it was 50 miles away from Zhang Tian, it suddenly roared toward the sky. It was the roar of a god and in an instant many laws were activated. Although they weren't pure, they were vast and complicated, smashing down on Zhang Tian like a huge mountain. You're just like an ant. Zhang Tian shook his head and chuckled. He didn't even look at him, he only raised his hand and slapped. Boom. The space in 100-mile radius was immediately compressed into a thin piece of paper. The boundless laws that were complicated and entangled like tangles, vast like an ocean, and heavy like a mountain suddenly shattered and transformed into powder under the terrifying pressure. What? He broke the Dharma laws with his body. That's terrifying. He broke the Dharma laws with pure strength, and they were created by a 9th-grade soul formation cultivator. This is too heaven-defying. Everyone was frightened and their heads were numb. They couldn't believe it. The might that Zhang Tian displayed at this time made them dare not believe it. The power of his body, his essence, chi Dharma laws. They all belonged to different levels. The higher the level, the more powerful and terrifying the power of the world outside could be. It was like the lever principle in physics. Ordinary people could move the earth if they were given a fulcrum. The higher their level, the more powerful their ability to use the outside world. Zhang Tian could use the Dharma laws and the power of the world at the moment, but he used the most basic physical strength to resist the enemy's Dharma laws, which belonged to a 9th-grade soul formation cultivator, and defeated him easily. How terrifying was this? How shocking was this? None of the divine lords present had such power, so they were extremely shocked. Brother Pai, retreat. Bing Jian, Xue Gumang and the others all warned loudly. Retreat. Sir God Pai, who was in the middle of it, turned pale with fright. He was so scared that his soul almost left his body. Without saying a word, he urged the deity to break open the space with the power of the Dharma and retreated as fast as a shooting star. But he was still a bit slower. He didn't even have time to let out a cry before he was compressed into a thin piece of paper by Zhang Tian's attack. Flesh, blood, bones, internal organs, and even the toughest divine treasures and gods were instantly turned into pieces of paper that were as thin as a cicada's wings. Countless nascent soul heavenly lords and golden core perfected cultivators in that area had died. Zhang Tian had been looking at the sky since the beginning. He didn't even look at Divine Lord Pai as if he were just an ant that he could kill casually. You're bullying my woman, aren't you? All of you have to die. Then Zhang Tian stomped his feet and the dimension was compressed like a spring, then returned to normal, pushing Zhang Tian into the sky like a ray of golden light. He crashed into the army of 100,000 soldiers of the Beihan sect and attacked the divine lords like a torpedo. He went on a rampage, killing countless golden core cultivators, nascent soul cultivators and crystal warships. Everywhere it passed, waves of blood gushed out. Severed limbs, wreckage of ships and fragments of magical tools and weapons fell down like rain, forming a bloody path that stretched across the heavens and the earth. The originally majestic and unshakable Alliance army formation was like a piece of paper. A huge crack was torn open by this bloody path. At this moment, all the cultivators and mortals on Earth and the Alliance army of the 5 divine sects were stunned. Even the peak stage soul formation cultivators like Bing Jian, Evil Moon and Gu Mang widened their eyes in disbelief. Zhang Tian's power was so terrifying that he could go through 100,000 soldiers with his body. I can't believe the sect master of the Taichu sect has become so powerful this time. This is the sect master of the Taichu sect, the divine lord of the Taichu sect. On the other hand, Zhang Tian's many disciples, relatives, and friends on Earth were extremely shocked and shouted excitedly, "No matter how many soldiers you have, I'll destroy them with a punch." Chapter 1763. When Jiang Tian came out of seclusion and flew up to the sky, he was about to start a war with the 5 divine sects. Kang Teichu has come out of seclusion. Can he make it in less than 7 days? In the space city of the Yuntian Palace, Han Ming Zongzi sat still. Endless great path laws roared around him, affecting the entire earth. He was like a peerless god of war. His eyes were indifferent and victory was in his grasp. Beside him, many extraterrestrial prodigies sat beside him. A huge heavenly water mirror was set up. It had a radius of dozens of meters and displayed the scene of the extraterrestrial battlefield down to the smallest detail. This was an observation-type quasi-sacred artifact. In the 9 underworlds, 3 realms, there was nothing that it could not see. There was no one that it could not see. Before this, every move on Earth had not escaped Han Ming Zongzi's observation. At the moment, the entire battlefield could be seen from every angle. The artifact spirit could even analyze their constitution, power, combat power and dharma artifacts. Han Qing, the second Zongzi of the Beihan sect, chuckled and said, "I wonder if Kang Teichu will dare to fight under brother's peerless power." He was in awe of Han Ming and didn't dare to compete with him. He could only follow him closely. Han Ming had reached the peak stage of the soul formation stage before he was 500 years old, and he was a sacred grade soul formation cultivator. He was extremely talented and there was almost 100% chance that he would become a void returning saint. He was ranked 26th on the galaxy list of the Big Dipper. Even Xianxia, the divine lord of the monsters, was only ranked 98th. The list was very important. In a word, no one in the South Gate galaxy had been able to make it to the galaxy list since the overlord of the wood spirit planet. I think he's quite stubborn. He'll choose to fight. Gui Yufan, the Zongzi of the banished deity palace, said. He had a head of silver hair and was surrounded by galaxies. He had a pair of silver wings on his back and his energy was intimidating. The banished immortal palace also came from the Big Dipper galaxy, but it wasn't in the Mizar galaxy but the Alcade galaxy. It was also a powerful million-year-old sect with a deep foundation and a strong orthodoxy. This Zongzi Gui Yufan was a half-saint divine transformation realm cultivator. But after entering the divine transformation realm, he had been refining for 300 years. His foundation was 1 level thicker than Han Ming's, and his strength was on par with Han Ming's. The reason he came to Earth was to help Han Ming Zongzi. This was because Han Ming Zongzi had already married his younger sister, Fairy Tsai. In the future he would be his brother-in-law. Of course he would support him. As for the Feiyang sect, the Limitless sect and other orthodoxies in the Alcade galaxy, it was all because of Gui Yufan. With brother Gui here, no matter how strong that Kang Teichu is, what can he do? Because they were related by marriage, the other party was helping him occupy Earth. Moreover, his strength was not ordinary. Han Ming naturally gave him face and said with a smile. Gui Yufan was ranked 32nd on the 1,000-year galaxy list of the Big Dipper galaxy. He had mastered the raging galaxy, divine power at the soul formation level. It was said that whenever he went to a planet region he could quickly merge with the dharma laws of that world. Once he used it, the Geo 3 realms and billions of miles of galaxies would be affected, which was extremely terrifying. And yet Han Ming knew that the most terrifying thing about him was the pair of silver wings on his back. That was a pair of natural-born quasi-sacred weapons. The sacred wings in his body had been refined with terrifying divine powers. One of the wings could split yin and yang, control wind and thunder, slash the world and move thousands of miles. It was extremely terrifying whether it was fighting or running away. Kang Teichu is stubborn. How dare he be so arrogant when the army is here? Does he really think we're just playing around like the ones in the ruins of deities? A sacred soul formation grand cultivator has made a flawless plan. When we arrive with 100,000 heavenly soldiers we can crush Earth. Guitsai's beauty was unparalleled. Her 2 slender legs were dazzlingly white, and her beautiful face was full of disdain. Like a lazy kitten she snuggled up to Han Ming and snorted. No matter what trump cards he has or what tricks he has up his sleeves, they will all be crushed by our supreme power. So what if he's a deity-grade nascent soul cultivator? A nascent soul cultivator will always be a nascent soul cultivator. Brother Han Ming, you were too gentle and kind before, which made him think you're easy to get along with. I've already given him a few chances. If he can't grasp them, he'll die. Hearing this, Han Ming Zongzi laughed and did not refute. He had a high chance of entering the void return level. What he lacked was resources. As a planet that had just recovered its spirit chi, the spirit chi on Earth was extremely pure and there were many heavenly treasures that could help him enter the void return level. However, what they didn't expect was that most of the spirit chi and heavenly treasures on Earth had been taken by Xianxia, his wife and his daughter, and refined into divine powers. So Han Ming Zongzi's goal was to devour the flesh of Xianxia's family to help him reach the void return level. That was why Han Ming Zongzi didn't turn hostile in the beginning. Instead, he used a soft strategy to control Earth. His goal was to wait for the return of Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing. In fact, he didn't care about Earth or even the solar system. He had already controlled countless galaxies of this scale. Besides, the other planets in the solar system except for Earth weren't suitable for cultivation and survival. Ever since he learned the truth about the destruction of the planets, his goal had always been the blood chi of Jiang Tian's family. Brother Han Ming, I'm right. Fairy Kai Yi's cherry-like lips parted slightly. She picked up the bronze cup and took a sip of the fiery flame wine. Her eyes sparkled as she said, "He's just a barbarian. His cultivation is incomplete and he doesn't know how to use cultivation resources or how to integrate with the great Tao of heaven and earth. What right does Kong Techu have to occupy a revived planet?" Kong Techu even claimed to be a Tao ancestor and resisted stubbornly. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. We should crush him directly. That's the true nature of the divine sect. To ants, there was no need to reason with them, talk about conciliation and strategy. If he dares to resist, we'll just kill him. She was pretty with delicate facial features and was only at the early stage of the soul formation realm. She was an 8th grade soul formation realm cultivator, which wasn't the top. However, she came from an extraordinary background and was naturally arrogant and domineering. Her words and actions were ruthless, as if she was the only one in the world. What Kai Yi said makes sense. This Zongzi is indeed too soft-hearted. Han Ming's eyes glittered as he nodded. Brother, there's one more thing. Han Che Qinshi and the others betrayed us and joined the barbarians. They're a disgrace to the Beihan sect. They deserve to be killed. Han Xing snorted and said, "If we conquer Earth, we must deal with them well. Cutting them into thousands of pieces is already a mercy. We must extract their divine souls and burn them in the fire for 100 years. They'll be tortured until they're better off dead." A group of heavenly talents from other planets nodded. While they were discussing, the entire all-heaven water mirror suddenly turned red and emitted endless red light. There were also bursts of thunder-like explosions that made people's hair stand on end. Did he do it? Everyone subconsciously looked at the all-heaven water mirror. They saw the horrifying picture of Jiang Tian tearing apart 10,000 core formation stage cultivators, 800 crystal warships, and 10 space fortresses with his physical body like an unsheathed heavenly saber. The heavenly talents from other planets were stunned and disbelief was written all over their faces. What? He's strong enough to tear apart the formation? Han Ming couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up with a terrified look. Countless broken limbs were scattered in the universe, glittering with the light of blood. The crystal warships were torn apart and their remains were shining with a metallic luster. Some of them even turned into molten iron and were quickly frozen by the coldness of the universe, spreading out in all kinds of weird shapes like abstract paintings. Jiang Tian's attack was equivalent to the attack of a peak-stage deity-grade soul formation cultivator. He immediately created a path of blood and fire in the terrifying formation. Thousands of golden core cultivators were killed, 100 crystal warships were penetrated and even a space fortress was cracked. Everyone in the 9 heavens 10 earths stared at this scene with their mouths agape. On the war chariots pulled by divine beasts in the extraterrestrial battlefield, the soul formation cultivators of the 5 divine sects were stunned. They had never thought that Jiang Tian would be so powerful. That was a military formation. Countless golden core cultivators had gathered and each of the warships was a deity artifact. They were arranged according to the laws of the world just like sand and cement. They were soft, but when water was mixed with a certain ratio, they would turn into concrete and become indestructible. Besides, there were many powerful divine warriors. And yet Jiang Tian had torn it apart. That was earth-shattering. Not many people could do that even in the Beidou family. At the moment, the heavenly talents from other planets in the Yuntian Palace couldn't even hold their glasses. The rainbow-winged fairy even dropped the bronze glass in her hand, making a clanking sound. Her face was pale and her eyes were wide open with deep fear and shock. Kill him. Otherwise you can kill yourself to atone for your sins. Han Ming had never suffered such a loss and setback, and he couldn't bear it at all. His handsome face revealed a somewhat harsh and ungrateful expression, and anger rose in his eyes. His killing intent was as cold as a blade as he flung his sleeve and spoke through his divine sense. Kang Taichu is talented. He's probably using a grand divine power of the universe. If we don't kill him while he's still weak, he'll definitely come back in the future. Gui Yufan stood up and patted his storage ring. The profound armor flew out and covered his body. He was ready for battle. A terrifying murderous aura rose to the sky, and he said in a deep voice, his murderous aura surged and he said, "We have to prepare for the worst. If the 4 divine sects can't defeat him, you and I will kill him ourselves." Yes. Many heavenly talents from other planets nodded. Send a message to the Wuji sect and the Feiyang sect in the Alcade galaxy. Tell them I've asked them to come and kill him. After that, I'll give them 2 planets with life. Han Ming was still worried. He glanced at Han Xing and said with a low voice, "Yes, brother." Han Xing immediately went out to send the message. This time, the Beidou family in the solar system is going all out. Dozens of soul formation grand cultivators. At least 20 of them are in the top 100 of the galaxy roll. Looks like Han Ming Zongzi is really angry. As soon as these words were spoken, many geniuses from other realms sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Han Ming in shock and fear. Poor Kangtu. On the pretty face of Fairy Tsai, there was also a hint of sympathy as she sighed in her heart. The Wuji sect and the Feiyang sect are as powerful as the Banished Deity Hall and the Beihan sect. They're all top divine sects, not comparable to second-rate divine sects like the Boundless sect. Kang Taichu is too arrogant. He doesn't know that the strong are easy to break. Sometimes it's wise to lower your head in the face of power. Even if he's the child of a natural deity or the reincarnation of a grand cultivator from the central galaxy, so what? I'm afraid he can only be killed in the cradle and crushed to pieces. That was the power of the Beihan sect. They had a history of hundreds of thousands of years, dominating the star ocean and controlling hundreds of colonized planets. They also had a wide network of connections and friendships among the cultivation sects in the 7 solar systems of the Beidou region. If they really wanted to kill someone, they could even kill them with resources. Chapter 1764. Kill him. Otherwise you'll have to kill yourselves. Han Ming Zongzi's divine will was heard. Divine Lord Bingjian, the palace master of Snow God Palace, turned pale and became extremely serious. He deeply knew how domineering Han Ming Zongzi was and how vicious he was. This wasn't a joke. If they didn't perform well and didn't kill Jiang Tian, Han Ming Zongzi would definitely kill them. He would tear these divine emperors into pieces and destroy the Snow God Palace and other affiliated sections. Although they knew that Jiang Tian was powerful, they had to fight with all their might under Han Ming Zongzi's suppression. "Zongzi, you have to kill him," Divine Lord Bingjian ordered as he grabbed the reins of the laws in his hand. Immediately, the black jade qilin that was pulling the black ice chariot, which was hundreds of feet long, suddenly stood up on its crystalline scales that were like black gold and profound jade. It let out an angry roar that shook the sky, and its pitch-black eyes that flowed with an icy aura stared at Jiang Tian. An enormous pressure surged out from its body like a stormy sea. Apparently, the qilin with the bloodline of a divine beast had sensed its master's anger and killing intent. Kang Taichu is too arrogant. He thinks he's talented and dares to attack the Beihan sect. He doesn't know how many elites like him we've killed. The sect master of the Beihuang sect, Gumang Divine Lord, shook his head as if he had already sentenced Jiang Tian to death. Kill him. How dare he offend the dignity of the Mizang planet region? He'll die 100 times to atone for it. The sect master of the Arctic sect, Divine Lord Evil Moon, stared at Jiang Tian with strong killing intent. A devilish blood moon rose behind him. It had a circumference of 5 kilometers and it was condensed from the laws. However, it was incomparably heavy and filled with a foul, gloomy and cold aura. It was as if countless blood demons, evil spirits and ghosts resided on it, and they roared ferociously and stole one's soul. That's right. How dare he offend Han Ming Zongzi? He'll die 100 times to atone for it. Kill him and avenge sect master Wuxia and elder Pai. This kid is seeking his own death. On the other hand, the ones that were filled with the most killing intent and were on the verge of going insane were the few elders of the Boundless sect. All of them were angered to the point their lungs were about to explode, and they gnashed their teeth and wished for nothing more than to tear Xianxia into pieces. Their sovereign Wuxia and Grand Elder Pai had both died tragically. This was a great loss. It was equivalent to losing the pillars that supported the sect. Their vitality was greatly damaged. Perhaps it would take several hundred years for them to recover to their peak state. Rumble. Under the urging of the Divine Lords, the Golden Core and nascent soul cultivators, as well as the space battleships and fortresses, quickly regrouped and got into formation. They formed a formation of 1,000 people, with ships protecting them and fortresses suppressing them. Very quickly, the starry sky was once again filled with 100 military formations. Their murderous aura was dense, and their ships and weapons stood in great numbers in a square formation. They surrounded Zhang Tian and surrounded him in the middle. Rumble. Zhang Tian showed his true form, holding the azure lotus and the golden lotus in his hand. His robe fluttered in the wind and his shoulder-length hair cascaded down like a waterfall. His eyes were calm and his temperament was peerless, as if he were a deity. What's that? The azure lotus and the golden lotus. It's ranked 10th on the list of exotic flowers and wood. Seeing Zhang Tian take out his weapon, many divine lords looked greedy and their saliva almost flowed out. There were too many legends about the golden lotus of the bitter sea and the golden lotus of the bitter sea. There were many legends about it. Even in the most hostile environment, it could take in the spirit chi of the world and grow vigorously. It could even produce chaotic energy. He actually has such a heavenly treasure. It's a peak stage Dao artifact or even a quasi-sacred weapon. Even Bing Jian, Evil Moon, Gu Mang and the other top divine lords couldn't stay calm. They stared at the azure lotus and the golden lotus in Zhang Tian's hand and didn't want to look away for a long time. The astral winds of the universe blew past, causing the space to ripple. The green lotus leaves swayed and golden lotus flowers bloomed one after another. They actually emitted waves of metallic clanging sounds, but the rich vitality was also vigorous and exuberant. It made people feel as if they had arrived at the beginning of the world's creation. There was actually a hazy primal chaos aura. That item was extremely valuable. It could nourish its owner and produce chaotic energy which could be used to attack. It was extremely rare even in the Big Dipper galaxy and its value was comparable to that of a planet with life. If one could take it away, it would be a great blessing, a great opportunity and a great creation. According to the ancient books, the ancient earth and the deity land's heavenly court were the cultivation's sacred grounds of the entire Milky Way. They were extremely prosperous and had many heavenly treasures. I didn't believe it at first. Now that I've seen this treasure, it seems that the rumors are true. Divine Lord Evil Moon's eyes glittered and his viciousness became more intense. Opportunities are found in danger. If we kill this guy, we'll definitely get a great harvest. The ancient Mang Divine Lord was also tempted and he almost drooled. At first they were only afraid of Han Ming Zongzi's power and had no choice but to fight. However, when they saw the treasure in Zhang Tian's hand, they were all envious and wanted to kill him immediately to take it away. Besides, that was only the beginning of the battle. If Zhang Tian took it out, it definitely wasn't his trump card. Who knew what other heavenly treasures Zhang Tian had? Haha, do you want it? If you want it, come and take it. Zhang Tian looked at the azure lotus and golden lotus in his hand and chuckled. I still have a lot of treasures like this. I'm just afraid that I'll cut you into pieces before you get it. Let's do it together. In the end, Divine Lord Bing Jian gave the order. When Zhang Tian attacked for the first time, he tore apart the army formation with his body. That was a surprise attack and the army of the 5 divine sects didn't expect that Zhang Tian would suddenly attack, so they didn't use any power. But this time, however, Zhang Tian encountered the joint attack of the divine sects battle formation. Those golden core cultivators weren't scattered rogue cultivators. They were terrifying beings who had been carefully trained by the divine sects and had gone through countless cruel trainings and battles. They had walked out of blood and fire and were terrifying beings who had survived hundreds of battles. They were well disciplined, wearing standard armor and holding standard dharma treasures and weapons. All of them were spirit treasures and true artifacts. Besides, their Dharma treasures were engraved with the same rune arrays. Through those rune arrays, their attacks were unified as if they had been magnified by a magnifying glass and gathered in one place. It was equal to the attack of 1,000 people and completely surpassed the attack of a soul formation cultivator. Such a battle formation had never failed in the battles in the Star Ocean. It was easy for them to kill soul formation cultivators. The horn was blown and it sounded ancient and boundless. It came from all directions and pierced through the air, making people's hearts tremble. 100,000 soldiers shouted together and the battleships surrounded Xianxia. Countless golden flames, azure thunderbolts, weapons, flying swords and starlight were all the manifestations of Dharma laws. They pierced through the air and attacked Xianxia from all directions. What did 1,000 golden core perfected cultivators mean? They were the most powerful overlords among the golden core cultivators and had grades. The normal golden core cultivators of the ruins of deity and the other dimensions of the solar system couldn't compare to them. Among them there were 100 nascent soul heavenly lords commanding. Not even a peak stage soul formation cultivator would be able to resist such a terrifying attack. Right then 100,000 golden core cultivators were attacking together. Besides, the Tao artifacts on the battleships and fortresses also opened fire. Many of them were super large Tao artifacts that were comparable to sacred weapons. Rumble. In the world. The world was in chaos as if the sun and the moon were upside down. Many Dharma laws a few miles long flashed across the sky and the fragments of the Grand Tao flew around. On the battlefield there were many formations and battleships. Countless weapons pointed to the sky like a dense forest, flashing with a frightening cold aura. Countless pieces of armor let out ear-piercing clanging sounds as they moved. In every military formation, the yuan qi around the extraterrestrial golden core warriors was boiling. Luster filled the air like rising clouds. When they attacked, the yuan qi, the luster and the clouds instantly merged into one. From afar it was as if 1,000 golden core warriors had formed a single person, breathing and moving. When this coordinated attack began, the mortal cultivators on Earth all revealed expressions of shock and fear. They were worried for Xianxia. This formation has killed at least 30 soul formation divine lords in the past 300 years. Even Hanch Divine Prince clenched his fists and trembled slightly. He was apparently extremely nervous. It's time to let you know the real power of the 5 divine sex formations. This is called Sand Makes a Tower. Even a sacred-grade soul formation cultivator can torture you to death. Bing Jian, Evil Moon, Gu Mang and the other divine lords from other planets were all gloating, as if they were sure they would win. Prek. Jiang Tian, who was surrounded by thousands of soldiers, gently waved the azure lotus and the golden lotus. Instantly, countless golden lotuses, shining with a golden metallic luster, flew into the air with clanging sounds. In an instant, the myriad of changes connected together like a huge lotus flower surrounding Xianxia, and Xianxia was that stamen. 1,000 lotuses. Rise. That was a defensive divine power that Xianxia had created based on that treasure. The azure lotus and the golden lotus infused with the gung metal divine law, turning into 1,000 lotus petals as a defense. It was extremely dense, protecting him inside. It could even turn alien Dharma laws into wood Dharma laws to nourish itself. That was the terror of a peak stage Tao artifact. Plang. Many precepts and great path attacks hit the 1,000 lotuses, but they were like eggs hitting a rock. They immediately exploded and were utterly defeated. All kinds of precepts collided with each other, obliterating the void and tearing the space apart. The sky was shaking and the stars seemed to be swaying. Even though the 1,000 lotuses were a bit shaken, they went back to normal after a short while. Apparently they couldn't hurt Xianxia. What? How is that possible? Exclaims of surprise rose and fell, and they resounded throughout the entire battlefield. Many cultivators from other planets who had been raging with viciousness were terrified. Their clothes were drenched in cold sweat and their legs were shaking. Is this kid's strength so tyrannical? 100,000 soldiers attacked together. What kind of body does he have? What divine power does he use? Even Evil Moon, Gu Mang and the other peak stage soul formation cultivators were in disbelief. The commander of the battlefield, Divine Lord Ice Mirror, was even more furious. He roared, "Fight again. I don't believe he can withstand it. Attack again. It's my turn." However, Zhang Tian didn't give them a chance. Whoosh! The 1,000 lotuses dispersed and countless petals turned into Dharma laws, surging out of the lotus. "It's been a long time since I had a good battle. I hope you won't disappoint me." On the other hand, Jiang Tianjuan's face was full of mockery. His desire to battle soared and shot through the clouds. Before the army realized what was going on, he had already shot to the sky. The Kunping Dharma form appeared behind him and turned into a beam of light, flashing into the nearest army. Swish! Jiang Tianqing's golden lotus had already swung down at lightning speed. Crack! Ear-splitting noises echoed non-stop. The laws were broken and the entire battle array fell apart. The 8 crystal warships were all torn apart like paper under the cutting of countless sharp golden lotuses. The components such as the engine, the crystals, and the runes exploded at the same time, turning into terrifying flowers of fire. 1,000 golden core cultivators and dozens of nascent soul cultivators in the army were all killed. He had destroyed 8 warships and killed 1,000 perfected cultivators with one attack. Chapter 1765. Pai Sun, back off. Many divine lords were stunned by Jiang Tian's shocking attack. They were stunned. Divine Lord Ice Mirror's expression suddenly changed. He opened his hand and countless laws of extreme cold and profound ice laws surged towards Jiang Tian. At the same time he let out a cry filled with panic and fear. The army that Jiang Tian had killed belonged to the Snow God Hall, and the one in charge was Bing Jian's beloved son, young Master Bing Futian. At this moment, after Jiang Tian destroyed the army formation, he immediately used the extreme speed of the Kunpeng and broke through the space. He was like a dragon soaring into the sky and a phoenix dancing in the 9 heavens. The Ice Mirror Divine Lord's extreme cold mystic ice laws all missed. Jiang Tian had already charged towards the stunned Bing Futian. Whoosh! With a sharp sound, Jiang Tianqing's golden lotus brushed past Bing Futian casually. Bing Futian was easily cut into countless pieces like tofu. His entire body was sliced into slices as it floated in the air and scattered in all directions. Even the gods couldn't avoid it. Bing Futian was also a soul formation cultivator with a good grade. He was at the mid-stage of the 8th grade and had all kinds of terrifying divine powers. He was probably even a bit more powerful than the old god Song Ming from the ruins of deities. If Jiang Tian had met him before he cultivated, he would have had a tough battle. At least he wouldn't have killed him so easily. But then, his entire body had transformed into slices that fluttered throughout the sky while his blood sprayed through the sky, and the crystalline bones, muscles, and veins that flickered with a faint glow could still be seen at the severed end of his body. At this moment he was like a fragile piece of tofu that was sliced into countless slices by Jiang Tian, and it was truly miserable to the extreme. "You can eat hot pot now." The big black dog, who had already arrived on the battlefield and was standing on the rising sun outside of the battlefield, was drooling. Right then Jiang Tian gently brushed past Bing Futian's indestructible body, Dharma laws of ice and the Dharma artifact robe, armor and Dharma artifacts that could withstand hundreds of nuclear explosions didn't work at all. He couldn't even withstand a single blow. Bing Futian is dead. The might of a single swipe is actually so terrifying. Many people were dumbfounded, unable to react. Bing Futian was the young lord of the Heavenly Snow Hall and the future successor of the Heavenly Snow Hall. Under the Ice Mirror he was recognized as the strongest person in the holy sect. He was even comparable to many of the elders. Normal soul formation cultivators were no match for him. They had to cultivate for thousands of years and reach the peak of the soul formation realm to be able to fight against him. And now he had been killed by Jiang Tian with a light brush. Jiang Tian in particular fought too casually. With the green lotus and the golden lotus in his hand, he moved with ease. He didn't look like a god of slaughter, but more like an outsider who didn't care about worldly affairs and didn't want to compete with others. Yet he killed Bing Futian so easily. How could everyone not be shocked? The treasure beast that pulled the carriage for Bing Futian was an ice jade dragon that was dozens of feet long. It even let out an earth-shattering roar at Jiang Tian, making the troops around step back. The soul formation cultivators in the formation were startled. They then opened their mouths and spat out a 10-mile ice pillar at Jiang Tian. This pillar of ice and snow pierced through the void, causing space to collapse. A terrifying spatial storm occurred, and the void was frozen and cracked amidst crackling sounds. A few nascent soul heavenly lords who didn't manage to escape in time were entangled by Dharma laws and their nascent souls were frozen. This included a half-step divine transformation realm divine prince whose strength was similar to Han Che's. Half of his body was affected and the ice laws immediately invaded his body. One of his arms lost its vitality and turned blue and purple. He cut off his entire arm without saying a word and retreated while screaming in pain. "It's the life of ice extinction," a soul formation divine lord exclaimed. This ice jade dragon was the treasure beast of the snow god Hull. It had the bloodline of a divine beast and the divine power it inherited was the famous life of ice extinction. It was famous on the ice divine power roll of the North Star and was said to be able to freeze the world and kill all living things. If their ancestors, the real divine beasts, used it, they could even kill the vitality of a planet. Swish swish. Jiang Tian once again used the extreme speed of the Kunping, breaking through the space. His entire body was like a real dragon, soaring into the sky, drawing a strange and twisting dragon-shaped curve. He easily dodged the life-extinguishing ice, and flew to the sky above the ice jade dragon. Then he raised the azure lotus golden lotus calmly and swung it down. Whoosh! The space was torn apart. Beams of golden light fell from the sky like a waterfall, densely packed and stacked on top of each other, forming a terrifying curtain of light that cut off the sky. Those were the halos and flames of the terrifying Gungjin lotuses, which cut straight at the ice jade dragon. Roar! Spare me! I can be your mount. The ice jade horn dragon could feel the terror of the peerless killing intent. The horns on its head looked extremely ferocious and terrifying. Its scaly face could not help but reveal a human-like expression of fear. It wanted to turn its head or retreat, but it was too late. "Sorry, I have a purple gold true dragon. My bloodline is much purer than yours." Jiang Tian did not show any mercy. He sneered and continued to attack. "Master, I was right to follow you. You really love me the most. I'm willing to die for you." In the distance, the purple gold true dragon on top of the rising sun battleship heard this and wiped away its non-existent tears. It was very touched. Crack! The ice jade hornless dragon's mountain-like head was the first to be severed from its neck. Its black jade-like eyes were still filled with unwillingness and fear, as if it couldn't believe that it had died in such a backward and destitute star field. After that, the dragon's entire body, which was over 30 meters long, shattered into pieces. Its internal organs, remains and dragon blood, which was overflowing with cold air, sprayed out like flowers scattered by a goddess. It was a horrible sight to behold. Everything happened too quickly. Jiang Tian had broken through the army formation, killed Bing Futian, and slaughtered the ice jade dragon in the blink of an eye. Only then did Divine Lord Bing Jie react. "Kang Teichu, you killed my beloved son and my disciple. I'll be a fool if I don't cut you into pieces today." At that moment, the Divine Lord of Ice Mirror was extremely furious. His long hair shot up into the sky and a violent murderous aura soared into the sky. The extreme cold mystic ice law rumbled and trembled, as if it was going to freeze the entire earth. He was shocked because Jiang Tian was so powerful. He had broken the formation and killed soul formation cultivators as if he were cutting grass. He was furious because his beloved son Bing Futian and half of the elites of his sect had died in Jiang Tian's hands. It wasn't a matter of being embarrassed. It was a real drop in power. If they returned to the Mizar planet system, the Snow God Temple would almost fall out of the top 10 divine sects in the star area. Kill! The infuriated Divine Lord Ice Mirror shook the reins of laws. The black jade Qilin roared into the sky and drove the black ice chariot toward Jiang Tian. At the same time, he waved his sleeve and a flying sword flew out towards Jiang Tian. Chapter 1766. The flying sword was less than 3 feet long and looked crystal clear as if it were carved out of ice. There were strange patterns all over it, which made it look beautiful and exquisite. However, there was an endless and terrifying chill condensed on it. It froze the space and everything. When it swept across the void, there were snow-white, lonely and cold stars appearing around it, like flying swords from the distant snow country. That was a supreme grade Dao artifact. It was no longer a ninth-grade Dao artifact. It was close to a quasi-divine weapon and was extremely powerful. Clang. This time, Jiang Tian formed a palm with his left hand and pushed it towards the strange flying sword that was shooting towards him. It seemed casual, but it was actually the first time Jiang Tian had used his nascent soul. Forbidden region. The 9 orifices chaotic divine infant opened its eyes and the divine plate behind it spun. The red bird divine law surged out and formed a sea of fire that drowned the ice flying sword. It spun again and the divine law of sea calming ice also merged with it silently. Crack, crack. Terrifying cracking sounds shook the sky. The ice flying sword didn't rush out of the sea of fire. Instead it jumped up and down like a caged beast struggling. What? Let's go. Divine Lord Ice Mirror couldn't believe his eyes. This flying ice sword was the most precious treasure of the Snow God Temple. It had been refined over hundreds of thousands of years by the sect masters of the Snow God Temple. It had extracted the endless cold air from many remote and cold ice planets and used the 9th heaven ice sword in the depths of the universe to create it. It could freeze the heavens and freeze the earth, destroying everything. But then it was frozen by Jiang Tian's forbidden region. The fire of Dharma laws was burning and seemed to be melting the ice sword. He couldn't accept it. He was already at the soul formation level and could control Dharma laws with ease. He could set up a forbidden region by raising his hand, but his natal artifact, which had been refined for thousands of years, couldn't break through the forbidden region formed by Jiang Tian, a nascent soul cultivator. But he didn't know. No matter how strong and smooth his Dharma laws were, they were just normal Dharma laws. They hadn't even reached the sacred grade. On the other hand, Jiang Tian's law was a dignified divine grade law. It was called the Nascent Soul Forbidden Domain, but it was actually an extremely powerful domain. He had long controlled the power of space. In Jiang Tian's forbidden zone, even the immortal laws could be suppressed, let alone him. Moreover, Jiang Tian had fused 2 types of nomological laws, which was equivalent to a double forbidden domain. The sea-calming ice god was like a cage of heaven and earth, and the vermilion bird divine law was like a crazed burning and strangling. Fellow Taoists, my flying sword has been sealed. Let's attack together. If we don't get rid of this kid, Han Ming Zongzi will be enraged and will be in big trouble. Unable to get his flying sword out or retrieve it, Sir God Bing Jian was extremely frustrated. As he drove the chariot madly towards Jiang Tian, he let out a roar to boost the morale of his men, telling them to charge towards Jiang Tian. Do you want this treasure? Let's see if you can take it. Jiang Tian didn't care about the flying ice sword at all. He allowed the 2 types of laws to imprison it. He raised his eyebrows and stepped out of the void. He took the initiative to attack. He was like a Kun Peng that swept across the 9 heavens and 10 earths as he charged toward divine sovereign Bingjie. When he was 10 miles away, suddenly the azure lotus golden lotus shook and countless petals flew out towards Jiang Tian. The golden lotus bloomed in the sky. With a thought, the flowers bloomed and the world reigned supreme. Numerous golden lotuses were crystalline and translucent, and they were like celestial flowers that bloomed with radiance and were suffused with auspicious radiance, causing them to seem gorgeous and moving. Jiang Tian stood lazily in midair like a smiling celestial that was holding a flower, and he was flawless and otherworldly. Brother Qilin, try your best to resist. Fellow Taoists, give me a hand. However, Sir God Bing Jian, who was facing the petals of the golden lotuses, was terrified. He was alarmed and roared as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Roar. The black jade Qilin was also a guardian beast. It had the bloodline of a divine beast and its strength was equivalent to a peak-stage soul formation cultivator. It was as powerful as the ice jade dragon that had been killed earlier. Hearing this, the treasure beast immediately opened its bloody mouth and roared. Immediately, space froze, turning into layer upon layer of law ice. It directly rushed up a few hundred feet high, covering the sky and covering the sun. It was like a 1,000 feet high wall wanting to block Jiang Tian's attack. Break. Sir God Bing Jian's blue eyes were filled with madness. He also roared and activated the dark ice nomological laws. Amidst loud clanging sounds, many lofty and steep snow mountains descended from the sky. They were all several thousand meters tall and were completely condensed from laws. Heavy snow spread out, smashing toward the gong gold lotuses that Jiang Tian had sent out. At the same time he slapped his storage ring and took out a dozen defensive doctrine artifacts. The chariot also shone brightly and formed layers of dark ice shields. However, they were still helpless against Jiang Tian's peerless divine law attack. They couldn't resist the power of the azure lotus golden lotus golden lotus. Qi. The dazzling and resplendent golden lotus was like a revolving excavator as it pierced through layer after layer of snow, sliced apart numerous Tao artifacts, shattered the profound ice laws, and smashed heavily onto the ice mirror divine monarch. Ah! Divine sovereign Bing Jian screamed in pain as he spat out a mouthful of blood that emitted a horrifying cold aura. He was blown away like a kite with a broken string. His mystic ice-heavy armor was broken and many cracks appeared on his body. Obviously he was severely wounded. Brother Qilin, help me. The ice mirror divine lord steadied himself with great difficulty. He spun around like a top, stepping on the laws of ice as if he was stepping on a bridge of ice and snow. He landed on a warship and shouted with fear on his face. The defensive power of a war chariot surpassed that of a normal warship and was comparable to a fortress. However, it was more flexible and flexible, allowing it to break through the void in an instant. Whether it was attacking or escaping, it was indispensable. At this moment he deeply felt how powerful Jiang Tian was. He didn't dare to be careless and asked for the help of the precious beast and war chariot. I'm not going. What put everyone in a difficult position was that Ink Jade Qilin actually shook its head and flatly refused. He's too powerful. I'll die. Didn't you see that the Ice Jade Dragon is dead? The Ink Jade Qilin spoke in human language with a look of deep fear. A wise man submits to circumstances. This Qilin, like me, is good at judging the situation and has already sensed the supreme majesty of my lord. The purple gold true dragon, who had turned into a big black dog, was sitting cross-legged on the rising sun. In the name of guarding Zhou Xueqing, it was protected by Zhou Xueqing. At this moment, it also gave a thumbs up to the Ink Jade Qilin. In one sentence it even praised the Ink Jade Qilin Jiang Tian and itself. You! How dare you! Seeing Jiang Tian step forward, the Ice Mirror Divine Lord couldn't wait any longer. He was both shocked and angry. For 10,000 years the Snow God Hall has raised you, Ba, Prol. Correct you, that's worship. The Ink Jade Qilin was very afraid of Jiang Tian, but when facing the Ice Mirror Divine Lord, it was very arrogant. It shouted anxiously, you worship me, but I've also contributed to the sect. Have you given your life to me? You want me to work for you? Ah, this Ink Jade Qilin is so rebellious. I like it. The big black dog laughed loudly and tears came out of his eyes. Big Black, you can't learn from it. Zhou Xueqing was also overjoyed. She didn't expect the Ink Jade Qilin to betray and escape at the last minute to be so righteous. Ice Mirror, what are you staring at? If you have the guts, come and hit me. I'm not doing this anymore. The Ink Jade Qilin broke the nomological reins and kicked off the war chariot. Then it flew into the sky and approached the big black dog. It said timidly, this black-skinned brother, do you have any melon seeds to eat? Seeing people fight, I naturally have to eat some melon seeds. Chapter 1767. I don't have seeds, but I have spicy strips. The large black dog took out a handful of specially made spicy strips, and cautiously moved closer to Zhou Xueqing. The black Jade Qilin also transformed to 2 meters tall and sat down cross-legged. It took a few bites of the spicy strip and suddenly said, do you know? Qilins are also a type of true dragon bloodline. Strictly speaking, we are the same species. Don't pretend to be friends. My lord is benevolent and always punishes the evildoers. You're not the one who planned the invasion of Earth, so what are you afraid of? The large black dog glanced at it and said disdainfully. The black Jade Qilin suddenly blushed and rubbed against it. It said in a low voice, actually I'm female. Didn't you say crawl for me? Bing Jian also calls you Brother Qilin. How did you become a mother? Then you should say, crawl for me. I don't read much, so don't lie to me. The large black dog said in surprise. It's just a catchphrase. After all, it's more domineering and fits the image of a treasure beast. Besides, if Bing Jian calls me Sister Qilin, it doesn't sound good on the battlefield. The black Jade Qilin said seriously. Indeed. My lord doesn't pay much attention to this. He always calls me Big Black on the battlefield, so he should call me Black Emperor, or Black Emperor. The large black dog nodded and said excitedly, Mistress, don't you think you should give me a more domineering name? Don't mind these details. Zhou Xian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Do you eat? Mizar Galaxy, Kuei Planet's specialty, original flavor. Foodies love it the most. To be honest, I'm a foodie too. I like the hot pot on Earth very much. This spicy strip is also not bad. Rolling its eyes, the black jade Qilin patted its storage bag and inserted a large, colorful sunflower that looked like a giant umbrella into the scales on its head. Then, it took out a melon seed that was as large as a fist and said fawningly, What do you mean? You talk about bloodline, gender, and hobbies. But the large black dog was dazed for a moment, and then suddenly came to a realization. He jumped up in fright. It hit on the other side of Zhou Xian and cried in panic, You don't be like this. I'm still young, not even 100 years old. You're already tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years old. You're old enough to be my grandmother. Mistress, please protect me. Covets my beauty. I might not be able to defeat it. Stop fooling around. Zhou Xian's smile had already faded. She nervously looked at the field. When the large black dog was confessed, Jiang Tian's battle had already reached its climax. When Jiang Tian stepped into the air and charged at Divine Lord Ice Mirror. Fellow Taoist Ice Mirror, let me help you. The ancient Mang Divine Lord roared and joined the battle with 3 Divine Transformation Realm Elders of the Northern Baron sect. At that moment, many semi-god realm extraterrestrial cultivators knew that the military formation could not cause any effective harm to Jiang Tian. It was like throwing an egg at a rock. Therefore, they decided to preserve their strength instead of wasting their energy. Jiang Tian immediately became surrounded by dangers. Thousand Mountain Seal. The ancient Mang Divine Lord stood in the chariot pulled by the red fire iron tiger. His sleeves fluttered in the wind and his hair and beard were white. He looked old and sage-like, but there were many mountains floating behind him, which were the mountain laws he had refined. His attacks were also ruthless. As he formed a seal with his fingers and palms, he waved his hand and slapped down. The thousands of mountains behind him whistled and flew out. They suddenly expanded with an ancient and boundless aura, crushing the void and shattering the laws. They pressed down on Jiang Tian with an unstoppable force. That was a grand divine power he had refined for 10,000 years while standing on the planet in the Northern Baron region. When he performed it right then, it was as powerful as Divine Lord Ice Mirrors. It might even be more powerful. Thousands of mountains descended in unison, and they were like meteors that struck the sky. Even the space seemed like a weak wooden bridge that couldn't bear the weight of gravity, and it creaked strangely. Unlike Ice Mirror's extreme ice, his Thousand Mountain Seal was heavier and more ancient. It gave off the feeling of a heavy sword without a sharp edge, as if it could overcome everything with brute force. Open. Jiang Tian had to give up on his plan to chase and kill Ice Mirror. He shook the green lotus in his hand and stabbed towards the sky. Suddenly, the 3 combinations of yin and yang, one was yin and one was yang and the other was yang. The laws were not fixed and the Gungjin dragon spears were formed under his will. Then the Gungjin dragon spears shot into the sky and pierced through the mountains. The thousands of mountains that were said to be able to shatter the stars and pierce through the earth exploded under the Gungjin dragon spears. The laws that belonged to the earth and stone element exploded in all directions, turning into wisps of vital energy that drifted in the air. How? The ancient Mang Divine Lord was shocked. He raised his long white eyebrows and a look of disbelief appeared on his thin and old face. Jiang Tian's Gungjin dragon spears seemed to be much smaller, like a silver needle picking up a giant rock. However, they miraculously pierced the weakest point of the laws of the mountains. Like a butcher dismembering an ox, they penetrated the gaps between the laws of the mountains and were easily solved. Then, the laws of the other 3 soul formation realm cultivators of the Northern Baron sect were also dissolved by Jiang Tian. This kid's divine sense is extraordinary. His vast mind power can see the mountains as if they were palm prints. I have to be very careful. The ancient Mang Divine Lord warned himself. However, Han Ming Zongzi had already given the order. There was no way he could back down. Therefore he formed another seal and slapped out. The laws had already dispersed. The mountains that were formed again were not as heavy as before. Therefore the ancient Mang Divine Lord shook the reins of the laws that bound the red flame iron tiger and shouted, "Red flame, go! Haha, as if you're instigating an evil dog. And yet, this bastard still listens to you and never dares to go against you." The black jade Qilin mocked. "Kill." The red flame iron tiger was 1,000 feet long. It was surrounded by flames and looked majestic. It roared at the sky and dashed towards Zhang Tian. Soon, it opened its mouth and spat out 1,000 feet long black flame. The flame burned through the air, leaving a long black mark in the air like the mark of lava. There were a lot of meteorites in this foreign battlefield. They were thousands of meters wide and were lying in the air. The exposed parts of them were covered in a metallic luster after billions of years of being blown by the wind and rain in the universe. They were strong enough that not even a nascent soul realm cultivator could destroy them easily. There were also the remains of many battleships and fortresses made of strange metals that were indestructible. However, they couldn't withstand the black flame at all. They collapsed in an instant or turned into liquid metal. The flame was as strong as a dragon and seemed to be intelligent. It chased after Zhang Tian like a maggot attached to a bone. Zhang Tian used the Kun Peng's extreme speed and changed his direction 9 times in an instant. He even used the great chaotic hole art to break open the space before dodging it. Kong Teichu had a strand of hair burned off. "I thought you were the child of a true god and that your body was indestructible and indestructible. You can't even defeat my mount. What's so great about you? Let's end this quickly. Attack together. Kill him." On the other hand, the ancient Mang Divine Sovereign was even more elated. Taking advantage of the situation, he led his 3 Divine Sovereign Elders to surround Zhang Tian from all directions and launch a new round of attacks. "You killed my beloved son, damaged my holy clan and injured me. If I don't take revenge, I won't be able to face the world." As for Divine Lord Ice Mirror, after using a few secret techniques and peerless elixirs to heal himself, he summoned a mammoth war chariot and brought a few divine lords with him. Gritting his teeth, he came back with great hatred. "Kill him and avenge our sect master, Divine Lord Wuxia." The sect master of the Boundless sect had been killed by Zhang Tian and the sect had almost been exterminated by Zhang Tian. The remaining elders and disciples hated Zhang Tian to the core. The remaining 2 soul formation elders also attacked. "Me too." Divine Lord Xiayu of the North Pole sect also shouted and joined the battle. At that moment, apart from the soul formation grand cultivators of the freezing North sect who were in charge of supervising the battle, on the battlefield, all the Sir Gods of the allied forces of the 5 major holy sects had attacked Zhang Tian. Damn it! A cold glint flashed across Zhang Tian's eyes as he looked at the few strands of curly black hair on his shoulder. Anger slowly boiled in his heart. Even though it wasn't a serious injury, Zhang Tian was enraged. The increase in power would bring about a change in mentality. When Zhang Tian came out of seclusion after reaching the mid-stage of the nascent soul level, he thought he could easily deal with all the peak stage or half-saints among the 9 soul formation cultivators, except for the sacred and deity soul formation cultivators. But he had never thought that he would be so embarrassed by an animal and a few strands of his hair were burnt. I'm too slow in killing people. I have to show my real strength. Qing'er is going to laugh at me. Facing the enemies coming from all directions, Zhang Tian looked calm. He heaved a sigh and gave Zhao Xueqing a sweet smile. "Kong Teichu, if you kneel down and surrender, will only kill you and won't hurt the innocent. Otherwise, your sect will be destroyed and earth will be bathed in blood." The ancient Mang Divine Lord's killing intent was heavy. With a roar, he drove the war chariot and charged at Zhang Tian. He formed a seal with his fingers and palms, unleashing the 1,000 Mountains seal again and attacking Zhang Tian. "Shut up. What right do you have to ask me to surrender? You're just an ant." Zhang Tian held the azure lotus golden lotus in his left hand and slapped with his right hand. After a boom, an unimaginable energy was released from Zhang Tian's hand. The entire world shook as if the universe were collapsing, the planets were shattering and the sun and the moon were falling. The extremely terrifying Dharma laws turned into chaotic substances and swept across the entire universe, making countless people's minds tremble. Many soul formation divine lords couldn't stand still and their legs trembled. At that moment, Zhang Tian seemed to have turned into a divine king from the primordial chaos, looking down on everyone. Divine lords were like ants under his feet. Chapter 1768. At the moment, in the boundless sky outside of Earth's gravitational field, Zhang Tian was surrounded by thousands of soldiers. 100,000 golden core cultivators, a few hundred nascent soul cultivators, many battleships, giant space fortresses like ancient mountains, and a space city like a star surrounded Zhang Tian. The 10 soul formation divine lords were at the front of the battle formation. Bing Jian, Gu Mang, and Evil Moon, the 3 most powerful divine lords, had already mastered the laws of the soul formation level and touched the edge of the grand Tao of the world. The power of laws around them had become solid, and there were even some patterns of the grand Tao surrounding them like runes. There were also all kinds of phenomena floating behind them, sacred and powerful. Once a cultivator entered the soul formation level, he would be supported by the world and be on the same level as the world. He would be able to control his own fate. The peak stage soul formation cultivators were the truly powerful ones. They had all kinds of unbelievable divine powers. It wasn't difficult for them to shake the universe, shatter the moon, and step on the universe. They were far more powerful than the nascent soul cultivators and normal soul formation cultivators in the ruins of deities. Bing Jian, Gu Mang, and Evil Moon had already touched the edge of the power of the void returning saints. At least they could feel it. Even though there was only a trace of the power of a saint, it was still terrifying and made them tremble. Not even the other soul formation cultivators could stand next to them. They were surrounded by bright lights and strange phenomena. Dharma laws rumbled, and the patterns of the grand Tao of the world were looming, as if they were real deities. And yet, even the powerful ones like Bing Jian, Gu Mang, and Evil Moon were terrified at the moment. The power of Zhang Tian's palm was too terrifying. There's a trace of chaotic power. How is that possible? Retreat. Gu Mang, Evil Moon, and Divine Lord Bing Jian were terrified and yelled. Even the 9-winged flying centipede that Evil Moon was riding, the red fire tiger that Gu Mang was riding, and Bing Jian's mammoth were frightened. They shrank like quails and ran for their lives. At this moment, a dazzling divine disk rose up behind Zhang Tian. It spun rapidly like a mysterious and vast galaxy, surrounded by chaotic energy. The 9 supreme laws merged into one, turning into chaotic laws that were like divine light and immortal light. They poured into Zhang Tian's body and surged to the center of his palm, unleashing and bursting forth. It turned out that when Zhang Tian was in the golden core stage, the divine disk was Zhang Tian's golden core. But now Zhang Tian had successfully stepped into the nascent soul realm, and the divine disk was the condensation of the divine elephant manifested from Zhang Tian's godly laws. 9 types of godly laws converged, and all of them were completed. What kind of terrifying power was that? Under the illumination of the dazzling divine disk, Zhang Tian's entire body was crystalline and translucent like glass. The vital blood in his body was like the beginning of the chaos, his meridians flowed like rivers of stars, and his surroundings were even covered in rosy clouds that emitted boundless rays of light and auspicious colors. He was dazzling and resplendent to the extreme, and he seemed like an ancient god that had created the heavens and the earth, like a true immortal that had descended from the 9 heavens. Before Zhang Tian, who was surrounded by multicolored light and enveloped by the laws of primal chaos, Gu Mang, Xiayu, Bing Jian, and the others' phenomena were like country bumpkins. It was the difference between a grain of rice and a bright moon in the sky. Their radiance was instantly covered, and they lost their splendor. They couldn't be compared at all. Right then, Zhang Tian's chaotic divine body, 9-orifice chaotic divine infant, immortal will, and many other godly laws had reached the phenomenal success level. It was the first time he had truly used the chaotic power. It was natural, and he could control it with ease. Is he still a nascent soul cultivator? I'm afraid even a sacred-grade nascent soul cultivator doesn't have such terrifying power. Right. Even Han Ming Zongzi didn't have such a terrifying power when he formed a sacred-grade nascent soul. Run. Retreat. 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 In an instant, the cultivators from other planets were frightened, and they retreated like stray dogs. The army immediately retreated like a tide. At that moment, many soul formation divine lords couldn't believe it. They retreated in fear, and their eyes were bloodshot with jealousy. Even though they were all soul formation cultivators, their chances of entering the void returning level were only 1% or even lower. However, the power and the grade of Zhang Tian's nascent soul were something they had never seen or heard of before. It could be inferred that Zhang Tian would definitely enter the soul formation cultivator, and his chances of entering the void returning level would be much higher than theirs. It was like a few rich people in a city who were originally superior seeing a bumpkin in the countryside earning tens of billions of yuan, who was far ahead of them and would be someone they would never be able to catch up with in the future. How could they not be envious and jealous? The army was further away. Gu Mang, Evil Moon and Bing Jian had the chariot to increase their speed. Even though they were severely affected, it wasn't fatal. They were only spitting out blood, but they were still able to maintain their divine power. However, the 3 soul formation cultivators following Gu Mang were the fastest. They didn't have chariots to protect them and they were only driving small battleships. They couldn't dodge in time. Bang! Under Zhang Tian's palm, the chaotic force surged like an ocean and was as heavy as a continent. The 3 semi-god realm warriors were like 3 flies that were easily squashed into meat paste. They couldn't fight back at all. The divine body covered by the Taoist artifact armor was like a fragile egg under the pressure of a 1,000-kilogram hammer. Couldn't even withstand a snap of the fingers and was crushed. The spaceship made of 9 heaven dark gold, which could withstand 100 controllable nuclear explosions and stand like a mountain, exploded like paper under the vast chaotic energy. Half of the ship was directly smashed into a metal pancake. Some of it even melted into liquid metal under the terrifyingly high temperature. The many rune arrays carved on it were instantly destroyed. For a time, space surged, strong winds raged, and all sorts of spatial collapses and storms appeared. Divine bones that flickered like gemstones, organs that were suffused with multicolored divine radiance, severed limbs, the wreckage of numerous battleships, and liquid metal exploded and surged towards the surroundings like a celestial maiden scattering flowers. Go to hell. Zhang Tian killed the remaining 3 divine transformation elders of the Huangyuan sect with a single palm. While the other divine transformation and divine lords were still in a daze, the divine disk behind Zhang Tian spun. It was as if a huge sun was shooting across the sky, crashing towards Gu Mang. He held the green golden lotus in one hand and slammed it down. At this moment, the resplendent divine disk was spinning like an eternal divine furnace, providing Zhang Tian with all kinds of god law power. The Kunpeng's laws broke through space and its speed was unimaginably fast. In almost the blink of an eye, it traversed 100 miles and arrived before the Gu Mang Divine Lord. My friend, please stop and listen to me. Gu Mang was so scared that his legs were trembling. His face was twitching and his eyes were filled with fear and despair. At the same time he opened his mouth to beg for mercy, the god in his body roared towards the sky. In an instant, thousands of mountains stretched across the sky, wanting to block Zhang Tian's palm strike. At the same time, the crimson flame iron tiger under him also opened its bloody mouth and shot out huge pillars of flames towards Zhang Tian. Listen to my ass. Zhang Tian cursed. He didn't hold back at all. He continued to attack with his palm. The chaotic energy covered the sky and the earth. It was filled with dazzling celestial light and divine light. It was like a millstone of the 9 heavens. All of ancient Mang's divine abilities and laws, including the imprint of 1,000 mountains and 10,000 peaks and the pillar of smoke sprayed out by the crimson flame iron tiger, were like an illusion before Zhang Tian's palm, completely obliterated. The red fire tiger at the front and the supreme-grade Taoist artifact war chariot behind it were also destroyed. Countless pieces of gold wrapped in blood turned into flames in the sky. If Gu Mang Divine Lord hadn't abandoned the war chariot and retreated, he would have been smashed into meat paste. Oh, save me. Even so, Gu Mang Divine Lord was greatly affected and let out a miserable cry. His skin and flesh were torn and his divine treasures cracked. His divine body was invaded by the chaotic laws and was blasted 100 miles away. He had already lost the ability to fight. SSS. The divine sect cultivators in the foreign battlefield felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads when they saw this scene. The red fire tiger was just an iron fool. A divine beast with the bloodline of a divine beast was treated as a vicious dog by Gu Mang, yet it still worked for him. Now it was killed by a single palm. Serves it right. The black jade Qilin's cute rodent teeth moved as it gnawed on a huge melon seed. Its scaly face revealed a human-like disdain as it mocked. Chapter 1769. Killing a divine lord and defeating an army of 10,000 with a single attack. At that moment, even the most arrogant and powerful divine lords, Gu Mang, Bing Jian and Evil Moon, were terrified by Jiang Tian's terrifying power. The divine wheel behind Jiang Tian spun like the sun in the sky. The 9 divine laws merged into one and turned into the chaotic energy, making his divine body shine brightly. Endless chaotic energy filled the air and rays of light surrounded him, as if he were an ancient god who had created the world. His every move carried an unstoppable power that could shatter the stars and the moon, shaking the vast universe. That had completely surpassed the limits of their power and reached another level of life. Many divine lords were terrified. Divine Lord Gu Mang, back off. Divine Lord Evil Moon yelled and reminded him. His scalp felt numb as if there were a lot of worms crawling around. He gritted his teeth and rode the flying centipede towards Jiang Tian, trying to stop Jiang Tian. Kill 10,000 troops on the left, take down the unsetting sun. 10,000 troops on the right attack Earth. The rest of the troops on the middle, follow me to kill Kong Teichu. Divine Lord Bing Jian yelled with his eyes wide open. As soon as the order was given, the entire army immediately split into 3 groups. Led by a space fortress that looked like the moon, hundreds of starships of the right army formed a long river of battle formation. They turned into a torrent of steel and rushed in the direction of Earth as fast as lightning. The 10,000 golden core cultivators and many nascent soul cultivators among them even let out earth-shattering roars. The crystal spaceships on the left fired their cannons at Zhou Xian and the unsetting sun. Countless spaceships on the middle troops, which had the largest scale, moved together and surrounded Jiang Tian, besieging Wei to save Zhao. The situation on the battlefield immediately became complicated. Jiang Tian, I can support you. Just kill your enemies. Zhou Xian yelled and stood up. She unsheathed her blade and shouted. Dong dong dong. The unsetting sun immediately started and shot straight into the sky. It seemed clumsy, but its speed was faster than the speed of light. In the vast starry sky, it circled irregularly, nimbly moving, appearing from time to time, madly fighting back. The pillars of lightning and energy shot out by the ships of both sides collided with each other in the sky. Clusters of terrifying flames exploded, tearing apart the space within a radius of hundreds of miles. Thunderous booms erupted from the collision. Zhou Xian was even more infuriated. She roared and led the Black Jade Kylan, the Purple Gold True Dragon, and the rest of the Soul Transformation Stage Corps generals into the enemy's formation fearlessly, fighting the 2 Soul Transformation Stage cultivators who were leading the team. Kong Teichu, this is your own choice. You just had to fight to the death with us. Then don't blame us for massacring Earth. All life on Earth will be exterminated and you will be the sinner of Earth. You will forever be nailed to the pillar of shame in history. This is the consequence of your stubbornness and stubbornness. The ancient Mang Divine Lord hid in one of the ships in the middle army. He spat out blood and laughed crazily. That day, all the Soul Transformation Stage elders of the Beihuang region were killed and their blood dyed the sky. They had suffered a great loss which made him hate Jiang Tian to the core. His viciousness and bloodthirstiness were completely stimulated. He thought that Jiang Tian would definitely retreat and defend himself. No matter what, his life was saved for the time being. Do you think I'll be afraid of you if you split up? Divine form of Ing Dragon, rise. Unexpectedly, Jiang Tian's figure swayed, and the dazzling divine disk behind him revolved. One of the galaxies suddenly lit up, and a terrifying aura that was like dark yellow earth soared into the sky. Divine laws appeared, and a phantom of a dragon head and a human body surged out and condensed in the sky. This divine image was extremely material and lifelike, and it was like a clone of Jiang Tian. It was 3 kilometers tall, towering in the heavens and the earth, and it shook the sun and moon. The aura of dark yellow earth coiled around it like a river of stars, and it was extremely dignified and terrifying. The talented golden core perfected cultivators were able to create Dharma forms. Almost every nascent soul Heavenly Lord could do that. The Heavenly Lord Dharma forms were able to interfere with the laws of the world, so they were called heavenly forms. Jiang Tian had a chaotic divine infant and a chaotic divine body. What he triggered was the most terrifying divine grade law in the universe. When it appeared, it was on par with the sky, as if a god had descended. That was why it was called a divine form. Is that his clone? Why doesn't it look like him at all? He controls the law of Earth and it's the most powerful one. He's not weaker than us or even more powerful. In an instant, Evil Moon and Divine Lord Ice Mirror, who were attacking Zhang Tian, were shocked. When they faced Zhang Tian's true body, their hearts were pounding. But now this was only a clone of Zhang Tian's. But even so, the terrifying laws emitted by the clones still made them unable to withstand it. This was simply too shocking. Divine Emperor Gengjin, rise. Zhang Tian shouted again and stomped his feet. The disc behind him spun again. God Emperor Gengjin, who was emitting an eternal and indestructible aura, appeared. He wore a flat crown with 12 tassels hanging down. He wore a dragon robe and golden armor. He was well versed in both civil and martial arts. He was like an ancient god emperor overlooking the world with deep majesty. There's more. This is. The appearance of the law of metal is at least beyond the 9th grade. Oh my god. What kind of nascent soul is that? In an instant, the entire area was filled with exclamations. Many extraterrestrial cultivators felt the terrifying pressure and their faces turned pale. The crystal warships and divine emperors who were attacking lost their morale. They could not wait to kneel down and worship him. They were like arrows at the end of their flight, unable to penetrate through the silk cloth. Their speed of attack decreased again. They couldn't be blamed for being afraid. There were two kinds of nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators who had laws of different grades. One kind controlled a law of heaven and earth, but it was extremely pure and vast. A typical example would be Divine Monarch Ice Mirror, who specialized in the extreme cold mystic ice law. It was one of the strongest ice laws. Once it was used, it could freeze a planet with life, exterminate all life and cut off all life. It was far stronger than ordinary divine monarchs of the ice laws. The other kind controlled many kinds of laws. Divine Lord Boundless was said to have infinite laws. Although it was a bit exaggerated, he had at least a dozen or even dozens of kinds. The Great Evolution Law created by the Teacher of the Ruins of Immortality was also in pursuit of such a realm. But if one was greedy, there would be many kinds of laws. Many kinds of laws weren't pure enough and their level was extremely low. Divine Lord Boundless had infinite laws, but most of them were only below the 9th grade. What he used was the fact that laws were interdependent and interdependent. They circulated endlessly, making it difficult for the enemy to break them. How could he be like Zhang Tian? Not only did he control many types of laws, but they were also incomparably pure. Every type of law had reached an extremely high grade. Moreover, all of them had formed an avatar-like celestial phenomenon. Even in the Big Dipper constellation, it was rare to see such a phenomenon in 10,000 years. It was simply heaven-defying. Go. Zhang Tian raised his hand and pointed in the air. Everyone saw it. The divine image of Earth-winged dragon threw its head back and roared angrily. Its scaly dragon claw-shaped hand grabbed a huge stone cauldron that looked like a strange stone, then turned into a brilliant stream of light and shot toward the right side of the army at a speed comparable to the speed of light. Rain Dragon of Thick Earth arrived first and caught up with the enemy in the blink of an eye. Standing in midair like a giant cauldron, it raised the entire cauldron of chaotic source rock above its head and smashed it at the 100 crystal warships of the 10,000 troops on the right. At that moment, the air exploded and the sky shook. Even the chaos was overturned and the energy was extremely terrifying. The entire stone cauldron seemed to be unstoppable as it pushed through the entire array of crystal warships that was about 100 kilometers long. Fire rose to the sky and explosions were earth-shattering. Giant fireworks bloomed in space, dazzling and dazzling. Golden core cultivators and nascent soul cultivators were killed one after another, turning into broken limbs and smoke. At that moment, the crystal ships of the right side that looked like a steel dragon exploded like firecrackers. The indestructible crystal warships that were capable of traversing continents, under the frenzied attacks of the myriad stone cauldron, exploded like fragile eggs. The wreckage of the warships was the eggshell, and the flesh and broken bones of the cultivators were the liquid in the egg. In the end, even the most powerful space fortress was penetrated by the Chaos Origin Cauldron. Under the terrifying heat caused by the collision, the Soul Formation Divine Lord who led the team directly turned into smoke. Again. The thick earth-winged dragon celestial form roared angrily and waved its hand. The myriad stone cauldron flew back into its hand and was thrown out again like an ancient god throwing out a mountain. Slash. As for the Gengjin divine emperor, his body swayed and he stepped on the heaven and earth. He crossed 100 miles in one step and charged into the left army. He clenched his right hand and the Gengjin divine law condensed into a 100-meter-long saber. It was like a saber cutting through water. One slash could destroy all lives in the sun and the moon. Under the slash of the saber, countless crystal warships were directly split apart in midair. The cut surface formed by the 100 refinement gold was as smooth as a mirror, reflecting the shadows of the stars and the space battlefield. Then one after another they exploded. Half of the entire left army was destroyed. What? The two armies are going to be annihilated. This is only his clone. How can it be so terrifying? At that moment, many cultivators from other planets in heaven and earth screamed in fear as if they had seen a devil. Chapter 1770. Strictly speaking, the Earth Dragon and the Gengjin Divine Emperor were only the manifestation of laws. They weren't Zhang Tian's clones. Clones had independent consciousness and thoughts just like a second life, but they were highly obedient to the main body. Even if the main body died, the clones could still survive and continue the main body's consciousness and life. However, Zhang Tian's divine forms were actually controlled by his immortal will. They were more like puppets. Once Zhang Tian died, they would also slowly disappear. At least, without the command of his immortal will, they wouldn't be able to fight anymore. However, those divine forms were too powerful. Under the control of Zhang Tian's vast immortal will, their attacks were also too smooth. So, they were even more terrifying than normal clones. He's too powerful. Even the manifestation of the heavenly laws is so terrifying. At that moment, even Evil Moon and Sir God Ice Mirror revealed a terrified expression. For the first time they regretted following Han Ming Zongzi to attack Earth. Who would have thought that such a terrifying grand cultivator would exist on a small planet that had been in decline for 100,000 years? For the first time they started to doubt if the entire Beihan sect was strong enough to kill Zhang Tian. He controls many kinds of laws, but he can only use two kinds of long-range attacks. His main body must be very weak and can't use his full strength. Let's kill him while he's weak. While Evil Moon and Bing Jian were still in a daze, the ancient Mang Divine Sovereign who was hiding in the crystal ship, let out a loud roar to remind everyone. I don't need to use my full strength to kill you. Die. Zhang Tian sneered. Suddenly the divine disc spun and turned into a kun peng. Then it spread its wings and swept across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. As if it was shuttling through 10,000 realms, it suddenly broke through the void and disappeared from its original spot. In the next moment, it swept past thousands of warships and broke through the walls of the crystal warships. It directly arrived above the Gumang Divine Lord and stretched out its hand, directly grabbing the Gumang Divine Lord's head. No. Fear appeared in the ancient Mang Divine Lord's eyes. He shouted crazily and all kinds of laws surged trying to break free. However, Zhang Tian clenched his hand and pinched his head, causing it to explode on the spot with a bang. His head shattered like a watermelon as red and white matter flowed out in all directions. In the end, even the god in the divine treasures was crushed, and not even his corpse was left behind. So far, 2 of the sect leaders of the 4 major divine sects had been killed. All the divine transformation realm elders of the Boundless sect and the Northern Baron sect had been killed. After killing Sir God Gumang casually, Zhang Tian swung his palm and blew up the entire spaceship from the inside with a punch. After that, he unleashed the extreme speed of the kun ping again. He traversed dozens of miles of void and arrived next to Sir God Xiaoyu like a ghost. Run! Sensing that Zhang Tian was approaching, Sir God Xiaoyu screamed in shock and patted the flying centipede that he was on. The 8-winged soaring centipede was an entire 300 m long, and its entire body was enveloped in space that rippled like water. Its figure was indistinct and illusory, and it seemed as if it could leap out of this world at any moment. The flying centipede was originally one of the strongest space divine beasts in the universe. Although it was still a distance away from the top space divine beasts such as the kun peng and the real dragon, it was no small matter. A purebred 18-winged soaring centipede from a distant ancestor could even engulf space, destroy a vast star, form a black hole, and travel freely across the universe as well as attack the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Although the 8-winged soaring centipede only possessed the ancient bloodline and had 8 wings, it could still traverse 1,000 miles of void with 1 wing, hide its body, and escape from an army of 10,000 soldiers. Hence, among the Surgods, Sir God Xiaoyu was the one who was least afraid of Zhou Xian. If he couldn't defeat him, he could flee far away and avoid him. However, at that very moment, Sir God Xiaoyu felt terrified when he sensed Zhou Xian's terrifying speed. He didn't dare to be negligent. As he controlled the 8-winged soaring centipede, he waved his right hand and the terrifying black-red full moon behind him flew across the sky like a meteorite. It drew an arc and headed towards Zhou Xian. That full moon was an ancient demon-suppressing heavenly prison he had taken from the depths of the Milky Way. It was essentially a 9 Serenity Death Star. It was said that countless primordial fiend gods had been imprisoned in the primordial times of the universe. There were a lot of remains, bloodlines and dharma laws left behind which were extremely fierce. He had refined them with the blood of tens of thousands of cultivators for thousands of years before they became his life golden elixir. After he entered the nascent soul level, he turned them into dharma laws in heaven form. Because it was too evil, dark, dirty, vicious and lifeless, it was called Evil Moon. It had once killed dozens of normal soul formation cultivators. Because of that, Sir God Xiaoyu became famous in the Big Dipper and was notorious for his fierceness. Once Evil Moon appeared, countless evil dharma laws turned into fiend gods, which let out howls like ghosts crying and wolves howling. They dashed towards Zhou Xian. They were 100 feet tall with 2 horns on their heads and a pair of giant bat-like wings on their backs. Some of them had white bones like zombies, some had tendons and muscles, some had rotten intestines, some had blood-red eyes, some had only 1 eye and some had only 2 empty eye sockets. They even had peerless spears or broken swords in their hands. All of them were surrounded by fiend qi and death qi, giving out a fierce and bloodthirsty smell. Get out of here. Zhou Xian flicked his sleeve, causing lightning to form at the bottom of his sleeve. Countless azure-colored bolts of lightning that were like enormous dragons. And they were extremely young and unyielding, capable of suppressing evil and suppressing devils. They surged out violently like a great river, and they transformed into a vast sea of lightning that completely blasted apart those divine spells, causing them to be electrocuted into ashes. Oh my God! Divine Lord Evil Moon turned pale and shouted. He was really scared. He didn't even have time to take back the Evil Moon Dharma laws and activated the 8-winged flying centipede to escape. Forbidden Region. Zhou Xian reached out with his right hand and directly performed the sea-calming ice god Dharma laws, forming a supreme territory. At that moment the entire universe stopped. The Dharma laws froze in the void and the spaceships that were originally charging around were suspended in the air in shock. The Dharma laws that were shot out suddenly stopped. Even the nascent soul realm and gold core realm cultivators suddenly stopped. The 8-winged flying centipede that was flying at high speed in the void froze in the void out of nowhere. With Zhou Xian as the center within a radius of a few hundred miles, time seemed to have stopped flowing. An extremely shocked expression froze on Divine Lord Evil Moon's face. He has mastered the law of space and his law of space is extremely high. It is far higher than the flying centipede's law. Even if he is a deity-grade nascent soul realm, it is impossible for him to be so terrifying. Could he be the legendary son of a real god, a deity from the 9th heaven? Divine Lord Evil Moon was terrified. He. Die. Zhou Xian didn't say anything and threw a punch. Divine Lord, please spare my life. At that moment, Divine Lord Evil Moon couldn't break free or fight back. He could only wail and beg for mercy. Too late. However, Zhou Xian's expression was indifferent and his eyes were cold. He still punched out without giving up. Clang. Zhou Xian's punch was too terrifying. The mighty punch that shook the universe turned into a green light pillar that pierced through the heavens and the earth. It destroyed Divine Lord Evil Moon's body, divine treasures and deity easily. Even his divine soul was killed by the power when it tried to escape. In the end, even the 8-winged flying centipede was blown up by Zhou Xian's punch. Its black hard shell, green blood and colorful organs flew everywhere. Evil Moon, the sect master of the North Pole sect, a supreme sect in Mizang Star Zone, died. At that moment the sea-calming ice god Forbidden Zone disappeared. The entire world seemed to have come alive and continued on its original path. However, the entire starry sky was in silence. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked over while trembling in fear. Even Divine Lord Ice Mirror turned pale as if he were in an ice cellar. He felt cold from head to toe. Even the anger of his son Bing Futian was extinguished. All that was left was fear. Gu Mang and Evil Moon, two divine lords at the sect master level, had died. They had been killed by Jiang Tian in the middle of an army. Countless nascent soul cultivators, golden core cultivators and soul formation cultivators around wanted to save them, but they couldn't. The power that Jiang Tian had just displayed was more than terrifying. It was earth-shattering and could push the universe away. Boom. In the void, the laws rumbled. A black and red evil moon and mountain phantoms appeared, like a mirage that was both real and illusory. Suddenly they emitted a bright light, then slowly dimmed and finally disappeared completely. That was the Dharma laws created by the death of Divine Lords Gu Mang and Evil Moon resonated with the world, making it sad. The more powerful a soul formation cultivator died, the more powerful the Dharma laws resonated with the Dharma laws in the world, and the more terrifying it was at the same time. At that moment, countless people were scared out of their wits and the entire star ocean was shaking. Even divine lords at the sect master level like Evil Moon, Gu Mang and Wuxia had been killed by Jiang Tian easily. What about the others? They wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. At that moment, the situation on the entire battlefield had been reversed. The troops on the left and right had been killed by Jiang Tian's two divine forms and the troops in the middle had been severely damaged. What was even more terrifying was that there were only a few soul formation cultivators and divine lords left. Retreat. Divine Lord Ice Mirror struggled. He clenched and unclenched his fists. In the end, he gritted his teeth and gave an order. Under the incredulous gaze of billions of people on Earth, the few remaining space fortresses fled to the outer space with crystal warships that seemed capable of dominating the world. They were as panicked as stray dogs. At that moment, Earth was boiling. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.